Lord of Mysteries. Survival from the Secret Doll Chapter 221 to 230. When Nicholas Flamel said, "It's over," it didn't mean these people could just leave, take the information, and happily return to their respective organizations to report. Moreover, they also saw their colleagues, subordinates, companions at Khoi University. These companions, who seemed more proactive than passive, offered them a restrained, awkward, yet polite smile. The first batch of Beyonders, in short, their mood was very complicated. The news outside is going crazy. All the major churches are asking the Night Church in Tingnan what exactly happened here. Another wind blessed from the Storm Church whispered to Wolf Conches, who was already devastated and beyond caring. The absent-minded Wolf Conches asked in confusion, "What's going crazy? Also, what does this have to do with the Night Church?" The wind blessed from the Storm Church, with a mysterious expression as if discussing secrets, did not directly answer Wolf Conch's question, but said mysteriously, "Not long ago, the God of War Church of the Forsac Empire brought up the Gods' Council, demanding that the Night Church share all information about Tingnan City and that strange school under the witness of God, and inform other churches of the corresponding situation." "The Night Church has something to do with Tingnan?" Wolf Conches subconsciously retorted. He was even more confused. When did the Night Church get involved with this suddenly emerging secret organization? His Eminence the Cardinal didn't mention it before. The wind blessed from the Storm Church looked at him with a disappointed expression. "Are you stupid? Look at the people here. Have you seen any Beyonders from the Night Church?" Wolf Conches had seen Beyonders from the Storm, Craftsman, God of Knowledge and Wisdom, Earth Mother, Eternal Blazing Sun, and God of War churches, including those from secret organizations who rarely showed up. He suddenly realized and said, "Are you saying that the Night Church is behind this strange university?" "I'm afraid it's more than that." The wind blessed from the Storm Church said mysteriously, "I saw it when I was hitching a ride. Those followers of the Night Church boarded the train with tickets." Wolf Conches opened his mouth slightly and said a very blank, "Ah?" His first reaction was, "Ah, why the double standard? No, why are they being suppressed, while the people from the Night Church are being politely invited on board? We are all churches of righteous gods. Okay, aren't you afraid of offending the Storm Church?" In short, the Night Church must have a close connection with Miskatonic University. All the churches are asking, but the Night Church's attitude is surprisingly firm. "Not long ago, it is said that something incredible happened." "Ah, of course, I don't know what it is specifically, but I only know that it is related to the Night Church, involves high-level secrets, and may even be related to that one." This wind blessed from the Storm Church gestured with his eyes to a place that was already empty, where Nicholas Flamel had previously stood. The Angel of the Thief pathway, a true big shot. However, after that, the God of War Church also went crazy for some reason. Before, the Forsac side had also had some contact with the Loen royal family. You know, most of the Loen royal family believe in the Lord. This matter cannot be concealed from the high-level members of the church. This was also what His Eminence the Cardinal told them when he was selected to hitch a ride for the church. Moreover, it is said that the Night Church and the God of War Church even broke down before the Gods' Council. That is, they rejected the other party's request and expressed their disagreement. Anyway, the two churches are mortal enemies, and fighting is not uncommon. Mutual pinching, they are used to it. It's as if no one's family has a true God as their boss. Over the years, no church has really been overthrown by an opposing church. The wind blessed from the Storm Church patted Wolf Conches on the shoulder sympathetically and comforted him. "So, His Eminence the Cardinal's meaning is to collect the corresponding information and bring it back completely and safely. But as it stands, this mission doesn't have much danger. Even if you hang outside that neat train, at most you'll be a little embarrassed during the Spirit World shuttle due to various strange creatures and unprotected shuttling. By the way, I saw that those people have all left. Why are you still here?" This wind blessed from the Storm Church asked with some doubts at this time. Wolf Conches was silent for a moment. The wind blessed from the Storm Church looked at his companion suspiciously. Then, he heard the other party's voice full of grief and indignation, "Only 2 points short, only 2 points short." Inside Miskatonic University. After Nicholas brought the people from Khoi University over and handed them over to the seers here, he prepared to leave Tingen. As the ostensible controller and leader of Miskatonic University, he not only needs to deal with the situation within the school, but also social interaction is also a very important means and reliance at certain times. For example, not long ago, His Holiness the Pope of the Night Church invited him to the Tranquility Cathedral in Winter County to discuss the God's Council proposed by the God of War Church, as well as some small problems of other church leaders. As an angel king who has become 2+1, almost equivalent to all embodiments of error, Nicholas, after replacing Amon's position, will inevitably encounter some historically inherited problems, such as the small difficulties of the official organizations where the former three angel kings of wind, wisdom, and white are now located. If the pinnacle power of the error pathway is controlled by someone with ulterior motives, then it is actually not much different from Amon's control. Rubbing his eyebrows, Nicholas looked at Tang, who was sitting on a high-backed chair, munching on biscuits and reading a novel. "Tang, are you going?" "No." Tang raised his head, his face full of resistance, and said righteously, "I'm an introvert, thank you." Socially anxious, he doesn't want to talk and just wants to stay in a dark corner to grow mushrooms. As a mystic servant, serving the mystic is what he should be doing now. What social interaction? No way, no way, Nicholas. There is a sense of déjà vu of the children in the family not wanting to come out to see relatives during the new year. Nicholas sighed silently, nodded to Tang, straightened his top hat, and his figure gradually dissipated, exchanging positions with a clone in Winter County, and heading to Winter County to have a friendly sparring with the Pope of the Night Church. After Tang saw Nicholas leave, he reached into the historical gap image and pulled out a few bags of potato chips, then turned his gaze to other places in Miskatonic University. Official Beyonders can avoid a lot of detours after specific training. This is the most direct and effective training method calculated by the system. For Beyonders, the accumulated experience in dealing with cultists and supernatural cases is a consideration of life. Whether it is the church, secret organizations, or wild Beyonders, the birth of every mid-sequence or high-sequence Beyonder inevitably treads on countless corpses, crawling out from piles of the dead. This includes not only enemies but also companions. Every regulation is born from blood and tears. In this situation, targeted training to reduce casualties is extremely important. Tang then looked at his system tasks. As one of the side quests, the task of establishing a secret organization now only requires continuously increasing the importance of Miskatonic University in the eyes of the Church, wild Beyonders, and secret organizations to continuously reap task rewards. And now, all the system task rewards are uniformly magic books. Although the effects of those magic books are very good, I always feel that there are some deeper meanings I don't know about. Tang thought for a while, removed the snacks from the historical void, and asked the system. "System, what is the hermit's ritual for becoming a god?" As a Sequence 1 seer, under the effect of a large number of knowledge fragments, Tang quickly obtained the answer he wanted from the system. No, accurately speaking, from the apex of the knowledge pathway, which is the knowledge more. As expected. Tang's eyes flickered slightly, then he stood up from the high-backed chair, walked to the floor-to-ceiling window of the office, and looked out at the huge, layered, and magnificent architectural complex. Archer, who learned the names of the subsequent sequence potions of the assassin pathway from the high-sequence assassin, felt like his soul was floating in the sky. Not only him, but also quite a few male assassins, as well as Celia and others who chose the hunter pathway, were in a similar state. As long as I don't try to advance to a demigod, I think I shouldn't have any problems. In the student cafeteria, Celia, turning grief and indignation into appetite, devoured spaghetti while talking to Archer. Which, Sequence 7, is actually called Witch. Archer's voice still seemed ethereal, like a ghost unable to find the ground, light and floating. A high-sequence witch personally demonstrated what black magic of a witch is, what joy, despair, and pain are. Celia called him several times before he returned from that strange state. "Are you okay?" Celia asked cautiously. To be honest, It was also the first time she had heard that Sequence 4 of the Hunter pathway and Sequence 7 of the Assassin pathway would change the gender of the potion taker. But she was okay. Sequence 4 already belonged to the level of a demigod, which was definitely not easy to reach, but Archer's Assassin pathway, Sequence 7 would change a person's gender. Don't say, it's quite mystical, it's just a little unacceptable. Archer smiled wryly. If he had been so grateful that he had crossed the gap between ordinary people and beyonders and was walking on the road ahead of others, then now he just wanted to slap himself twice for impatiently concocting potions to become an assassin as soon as he arrived in a strange place. Potions cannot be drunk randomly. He felt that he had already used a deep enough lesson that he could foresee to warn himself that the world of the extraordinary was not just magical. Just as the high sequence assassin said, the underlying rules of this world are chaos and disorder. Of course, there are actually ways to salvage it. Beyonders with low sequences can use the characteristics of Sequence 4, Darkness Redeemer, of the Sun pathway to extract low sequence potions while alive, retaining only the spirituality and physical improvements gained during the advancement process, abandoning extraordinary power, and then reselecting a new pathway and reconcocting potions for advancement. But one is that even so, the spirituality and body transformed by the potion after extracting the extraordinary characteristics are more likely to lose control when readapting to other potions. If a Sequence 9 Beyander plans to choose another pathway, it is okay. Having completed an advancement, in the case of Sequence 8, or Sequence 7. Such people reselecting a God pathway, if it is an adjacent pathway, there may not be too much problem, but if it is a non-adjacent pathway, then even if they understand the acting method, perhaps wandering in the low sequences for life is an unchangeable ending. And 2, the Darkness Redeemer is a high sequence Beyander. It is difficult for Sequence 9 and Sequence 8 Beyonders to invite such a big shot. Although there are indeed Darkness Redeemer level puppets in Miskatonic University, the price required to ask such a level of people to help extract extraordinary characteristics is also very high. These were the original words of the High Sequence Witch and High Sequence Assassin. As long as they are willing to pay the price, before getting higher level improvements, they can choose to extract the potion and reselect the adjacent Hunter pathway, or jump to other pathways. Although this has side effects, and they may only be able to stay in the low and mid sequences forever, they don't need to worry too much about their gender issues. Archer wanted to pay for his mistakes. He was only a Sequence 9 Beyander, and the advancement time was less than half a year, so perhaps it wasn't difficult. But the price required to ask a Darkness Redeemer to do this for him was also something Archer could not afford. Saying I'm okay is lying. Archer gave Celia a reluctant smile, but still had a bitter face, but that's all I can do. He doesn't just want to be a provoker, just a low sequence Beyander. Everyone has ambition. After understanding the sequence pathways and understanding the meaning contained in them, no one does not yearn for the high sequences, for those existences that have opened the door to divinity. At worst, I'll switch back at Sequence 4, Archer thought, gritting his teeth. Celia. What's going on with this appearance that seems to have even higher fighting spirit? Beyonders who graduated from Khoi University were all arranged by Nicola to Miskatonic University. This is not only because most of these Beyonders belong to the official and secret organizations and have experience and knowledge that many wild Beyonders cannot understand, but also because of Tang's decision. If we don't understand, how can we let them take the information back to their organizations and report to their superiors? A high sequence appraiser of the Sun pathway signed an agreement with these official, secret organizations, or wild Beyonders, requiring them to do some things within Miskatonic University. The requirements of the contract were simple. Miskatonic University would, at a reasonable price, employ these Beyonders to work here for a period of time. These Beyonders needed to provide certain experiences, knowledge that didn't involve the deep secrets of the churches, to help those scholars who came from the North and South continents by steam train, so that they could go further in the world of the supernatural. Some things couldn't be learned through rigid and inflexible book knowledge. Although the marionette's experiences were also rich, Tang and Nicola, and high-ranking individuals like Olsen, could be described as rich in knowledge and experience. But no one is perfect. Tang also had to admit that in some areas he really couldn't compare to the churches. Miskatonic University ultimately lacked some of the heritage accumulated from history. And in contrast to this, potions, formulas, money, Beander items, even sealed artifacts, certain high-level knowledge, ancient secrets, and even the truth of the world can be used as payment. This is a very reasonable transaction and contract. In the huge lecture hall, the major churches, secret organizations, and wild beyonders, who were already somewhat familiar with this strange room, silently looked at the contract placed in front of them. This fair contract had been confirmed by the clergy of the Eternal Blazing Sun Church to be free of loopholes, errors, and misleading information. Of course, if the one who tampered with it was a high sequence of the lawyer pathway with the authority to distort, or if it was done by that angel of error, they wouldn't be able to see the problem. They could only rely on the other party's conscience and the arrogance of an angel, who wouldn't bother to trick them in this kind of place. The witness to the contract is a high sequence of the sun pathway, and it involves certain knowledge, mad knowledge. A Beander from the Moss ascetics looked at the countless distorted lines that seemed to reveal madness, and said in a low voice, "To be honest, this was a very fair price. Using one's own knowledge, experience, and time to exchange for what the other party said sounded like a good channel." At this time, standing on the podium of the lecture hall was a Beander with golden eyebrows and pupils that also burned with golden flames. His bright golden short hair seemed to be filled with sunlight, and his temperament was warm, like a purifying sun. That was sequence 4 of the sun pathway, a light seer, a demigod-level notary. You can choose not to sign. The university will not force you to sign this contract. The light seer said in a low voice at this time. Of course, Mr. Flammel will take certain measures against those who do not sign the contract. As for what measures, he didn't specify. A threat, a blatant threat. The light seer, bearing the gazes of those beyonders, did not change his expression in the slightest. He was still so dazzling and pure. Isn't your sun pathway known to be the most just, the most devoid of darkness, and unwilling to do this kind of underhanded, not at all above-board thing? Oh, there are actually people like this in the pathways your church controls. I can't look directly at the beyonders of the sun pathway anymore. The clergy of the Eternal Blazing Sun Church felt that they had suffered an injustice, they had been insulted. Stereotypes. All stereotypes. Besides, this isn't our church's person. Don't look at us like that. Sure enough, prejudice in people's hearts is a mountain. Faced with these low to mid-sequence beyonders who were slow to pick up their pens and stared straight at him, seemingly engaged in silent resistance, the light seer only showed a smile. High sequences are high sequences. None of those present had divinity. Even if they were angry in their hearts, no one could fight him. Moreover, if a real fight broke out, even if it was a siege, the best result would be being pinned to the ground and rubbed by him. Besides, no one could be sure how many demigods and angels were here. The existence of an angel like Nicola Flamel, even if he wasn't here, was still the greatest deterrent. And at the end of the silent resistance, it was the wild beyonders who took the lead in signing the contract first. I need sequence 5, the Wraith's potion formula and materials. The wild beyander who first signed his name on the contract also stared straight at the light seer. Of course, the light seer nodded, and we can also help you hold the corresponding ritual, as long as you do enough work to match this reward and can afford the corresponding payment. Clearly marked prices, no deception of the young or old. Okay. The wild beyander, who was obviously a living corpse, couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and nodded for this reason. With the first person taking the lead, many people then picked up their pens and wrote their names on the contract. The vast majority of these people were still wild beyonders, or ordinary members who were not valued in secret organizations. In their opinion, the rewards given by Miskatonic University were indeed a good opportunity. High enough position, strong enough power, and very generous. After those beyonders who had signed the contract left the classroom, the light seer continued to look at the remaining people. Most of these people were beyonders from major churches, and a small number were members of secret organizations. Almost all of the wild beyonders had seized this opportunity. And the beyonders of the churches and the members of the secret organizations either needed to be responsible to their own churches, or had a certain status in their secret organizations and didn't want to sell themselves out so easily. You can choose to contact your own churches, the Light Seer said. We will forward your intentions on your behalf. Forward on their behalf? The use of this word was very subtle. The Beyonders of the churches slandered in this way. After communicating with their companions who came in the second batch, they were not so resistant to staying here for a period of time, but in the end, it still needed to be discussed and decided within the church. The so-called employment exceeded the scope of their functions after all. If they didn't go through the proper channels once, they might be labeled as blasphemous or betraying the church when they returned. After sealing and preserving the written letters with their respective churches' methods, and handing them over to the Light Seer demigod, the lecture hall fell into a long silence. After taking these letters out of the classroom, the Light Seer transferred them to Nicola Flamel, who was currently in Winter County, talking eloquently, with a group of other churches' high-ranking individuals, through the system's warehouse. Winter County, Ancha's town under the jurisdiction of the Silent Church of the Night Church. Although this was not the location designated by the God of War Church of the Fursak Empire, the Beyonders of other churches still sent their saints to Ancha's town, which was directly managed by the Silent Church headquarters of the Night Church. Nicola Flamel is infinitely close to Sequence 0 of the Seer pathway. Amon has fallen to Sequence 2 and his whereabouts are still unknown. The other 6 Orthodox churches besides the Night Church would not sit idly by at just such news. In this era, the emergence of a new deity represents a new force. Whether it's the anchors of the gods or certain future events, they all need to be redefined and planned accordingly. And obviously, Nicola Flammarion has an inevitable connection with the Night Church. At the same time, they also have a Sequence 1, mystic, servant. This is what the divine revelations received by several churches mentioned. Sequence 1 angels and Sequence 2 angels, Sequence 3 and 4 saints all have a certain degree of difference in persona and power. Although they are all demigods, Sequence 1 angels can already represent the Sequence 0 of their pathway to some extent. This is something that Sequence 2 angels cannot achieve, even though Sequence 1 and Sequence 2 were both called subordinate gods in ancient times. After all, apart from some ingenious situations, the biggest characteristic of the sequence pathway is that if there is Sequence 0, there will be no Sequence 1. Sequence 1 is the level closest to the gods below the gods. Such an existence is a variable, and no organization will underestimate it. The arrival of Nicola Flammarion, apart from the Pope of the Night Church who still seemed calm, the saints of the other churches couldn't help but look away when they saw this man take out a monocle from somewhere and silently rub it in his hand. As high-level members of their respective churches, many secrets from the Tudor Empire period of the Fourth Epoch and the ancient sun god period of the Third Epoch are not secrets to them. They are quite clear about what the monocle held by Nicola Flammarion is. Please sit down. Okay. In response to the words of the Pope of the Night Church, King of Angels Nicola Flammarion sat down calmly with a faint smile on his face. On both sides of the long table were saints, and the God of War Church even sent an angel, but when faced with King of Angels Nicola, the angel of the God of War Church seemed a little lacking in confidence. The reason why the major churches sent representatives this time is firstly because of some situations regarding Your Excellency Flammarion. The Pope of the Night Church, as the host of this meeting, stood up and said this first. How did he become the Sequence 1 King of Angels? How did he kill Amon and take away the uniqueness of the thief pathway and that extraordinary characteristic from him? These are the questions that the major churches are closely watching, especially the 3 churches of Storms, Wisdom, and White Light. After all, Amon is a descendant of the ancient sun god. As a betrayer, the Lord of Storms, the God of Wisdom and Knowledge, and the eternal blazing sun all pay a lot of attention to this matter. However, there is one thing they got wrong, or rather, mixed up. Amon's loss of a Sequence 1 extraordinary characteristic and the loss of his uniqueness happened more than 300 years ago. At that time, Amon was not a 1+1 King of Angels, but had already devoured the ancestor of the Jacob family, a 2+1, the King of Angels closest to the godhood, the incarnation of all errors. Amon had been hiding it very well. Only Tang and pals Zoroaster, who personally participated, and the subsequent descent of the night goddess knew about it. As for why the other gods didn't notice, perhaps there was also the handiwork of the writer Adam in it. After all, the fewer people who knew about Amon's serious injury, the better. Although Nicola Flammarion has been appearing in various places with the persona of a Sequence 1 angel for nearly 300 years, and the monocle often appears in this angel's hand, Amon also holds a monocle. This cannot be used as favorable evidence to prove that Amon has lost that uniqueness, nor can it prove that Nicola Flammarion is not an incarnation of Amon. But now, the major churches have received revelations from the gods, which clearly indicate that the king of angels of the thief pathway has changed. That weakened uniqueness accommodating ritual was held in the astral world and could not deceive any god. That god of deception, god of mischief, the great noble of the Fourth Epoch, the child of the ancient sun god of the Third Epoch, the blasphemer, Amon disappeared just like that, losing his Sequence 1 extraordinary characteristic and uniqueness. Secondly, it is about the issue of Miskatonic University, which has recently emerged and is closely related to Your Excellency Flammarion. This issue is even more interesting. Nicola Flammarion glanced around at everyone present and said with a smile, "What do you want to hear?" Your Excellency Flammarion, the first to speak, was not the saint of the God of War Church, which had already had a falling out with the Night Church, but the saint of the Church of Steam and Machinery, which jointly preached in Rouen and Intis. That was a Sequence 3, a scholar of mysteries. The Church of Steam and Machinery obviously attached great importance to this meeting, and they sent one of the top leaders of their church. If it weren't for the fact that the Trier Diocese of Intis needed an angel to be stationed for a long time, and the resources of the Church of Steam and Machinery itself were not rich enough, an angel would have come this time. After all, this is closely related to their Lord. Being able to send a Sequence 3 to participate in the meeting under such circumstances is enough to show the importance that the Church of Steam and Machinery attaches to this matter. Please speak. Nicola did not show any expression that did not fit the scene because the other party was an enemy of the system. Even though the system clone in his brain was screaming frantically, "Ah, electrocute him, Nicola, slap him, parasitize, parasitize, potion, potion. This system wants potion," distorting scream. Nicola's expression was still quite gentle. "There is one thing I have never understood," the scholar of mysteries from the Church of Steam and Machinery said in a deep voice. "Why are you so repulsed by the Church, repulsed by its craftsmen? There is not even a Church of Steam and Machinery in Tingnan City. They are not even willing to do the superficial work of the Night Church and the Storm Church. This is the point that the Church of Steam and Machinery can't understand the most. It is also the point that other churches can't understand. Because of the system. Tang, who was observing from the perspective of the secret puppet, couldn't help but stuff the system, which was also constantly screaming and waiting to be fed in his mind, into the brain of Bishop Brooks, the war bishop who had already advanced to Sequence 2 Weather Warlock, not far away. Brooks. Good question. Nicola still maintained a proper smile. Without revealing the existence of the system, indeed, whether it is the thief or the seer, it is completely different from the night and war god. These two pathways have nothing to do with the craftsman. So, why not let the Church of Steam and Machinery be built in Tingnan? Why wouldn't they allow the artisan church to be built in Tingnan? Everyone was waiting for this answer. This answer had troubled the artisan church for a long time, but they had never received an answer to this day. The saint of the artisan church looked intently at Nicola Flammarion, who was sitting there steadily, playing with the monocle in his hand. He heard the other party say slowly, calmly, with a faint smile, "Why do you think I would allow the artisan church to be established in Tingnan?" Why? The saint of the artisan church frowned. He didn't understand what Nicola wanted to express. Artisans, that is, apprentices, are the neighboring sequence to seers. Since the Evernight and Storms churches can enter, why can't they? Because they come from Intis? No, this obviously doesn't have universality and is not part of the reason. I think my performance has been quite obvious. Otherwise, allowing the artisan church to enter Tingnan is essentially refusing to establish a closer relationship with the artisans. Nicola picked up the monocle in his hand and put it in his right eye socket. After putting on the monocle, this king of angels pinched the object that once symbolized the uniqueness of the seer pathway. This was a habit of more than 300 years, and Nicola did it very smoothly. Perhaps this monocle is no longer the uniqueness of the seer pathway. as the King of Angels who has reabsorbed the uniqueness and become the King of Angels of the seer pathway. Nicola Flammarion can completely revise various concepts and symbols of the uniqueness himself. And that monocle, compared to its actual function, is perhaps more inclined to symbolic meaning. It symbolizes Ammon, the former god of deceit, the former blasphemer. He fell into the hands of this new King of Angels, becoming the other party's nourishment, helping the other party to take a step further away from the godhood. And being stared at by such a monocle, and the eyes behind this monocle, gave every daredevil a kind of horror that could not be described in words. It was as if the true reflection of the heart was being seen through, as if the soul was stuffed into incomprehensible errors and loopholes, and the spirit and soul were all torn apart and reorganized in various ways, becoming a spiritual patchwork monster. Ugly and unbearable, all the thoughts in the heart were seen through, and all were exposed to the other party without reservation. It was as if one's own destiny was being replaced, they became the other party's puppets, their own consciousness was elevated, and the body at the scene was just a puppet without a soul, constantly performing according to a predetermined program. Sequence 2, Fate Stealer. Catching a glimpse of the ups and downs of fate, like a plague, infecting the other party's time, identity, status, extraordinary characteristics, and fate with a virus called time worm. Even if every saint here is an apostle of God, perhaps there are gods watching here through their believers, unable to parasitize with time worms, but just the gaze of this King of Angels can make many problems erupt in an instant. Let faith and self contradict each other, let loopholes appear in the weaving of the river of fate, and bugs appear in everyone's thoughts, spirit, and soul. After being swept by such a gaze, the saint of the artisan church couldn't help but turn his head away, not daring to look at the other party's eyes. Miskatonic University welcomes the artisans, but Tingnan doesn't need them. Nicola Flammarion's calm voice sounded again. The two are not equal. The saints who can be sent here are not fools whose brains have been eroded by potions. Every saint also read the information they wanted from it. Nicola Flammarion, this King of Angels, has a resistant, even disgusted attitude towards the artisans. But he doesn't reject the extraordinary of the artisan church from entering Miskatonic University to study, as long as the other party doesn't bear the name of God of Artisans. Miskatonic University, Nicola Flammarion is not prepared to help the artisans digest the potion and help that God stabilize his state. And this is something that everyone has known for 300 years, but it was also exposed at this time. Let the last hope of the saint of the artisan church collapse. And the reason is, Moses Ascetics. He said the name of this secret organization to the saint of the artisan church with a smile. The saint of the artisan church suddenly raised his head, and then his expression suddenly sank. Miskatonic University and the Moses Ascetics also have certain connections? The Moses Ascetics and that university have a certain cooperative relationship? No, it's not just the Moses Ascetics, it's also related to the hidden sage. Not cooperating with this is because of the hidden sage himself, or, do they have someone who is a high sequence being of the seer pathway? Explaining it with adjacent pathways, with the existence of a high sequence being of the seer pathway. Not cooperating with this can be barely explained. But having a high sequence being of the seer pathway does not mean that they must be enemies with the artisan church. Even the artisan church can become the other party's ally to a certain extent. It's impossible that someone on Nicola Flammarion's side is already preparing to advance to sequence 0 of the seer pathway in order to weaken their lord, right? So it's the former. The other party must have a certain connection with the hidden sage and cooperate with the Moses Ascetics, so they are targeting their artisan church. Yes, it must be so. Nicola didn't say much. In an unusually simple situation, even without giving any definite answers, he ignored the saint of the artisan church and turned his gaze to the tall man from the Forsaken Empire's God of War church. This is an angel, a sequence 2 glorybringer. Bardhair obviously attached great importance to this meeting. Tang, through the authority of observation, saw that more than one god was paying attention here through their believers. What did your lord ask you to convey? Nicola Flammarion asked with a smile. This sequence 2 glorybringer was silent. Only in the next moment did the Pope of the Evernight Church's eyes suddenly become deep and profound, like a piece of blackness with no bottom in sight. Alex White. The Pope of the Evernight Church suddenly shouted violently, and the blackness in the entire conference hall seemed to boil. The angels hidden in the dark, stationed in the Tranquility Cathedral, also showed a tendency to take action. The clergy, saints, and angels of the Evernight Church themselves were unusually vigilant towards high sequence extraordinary of the warrior pathway. Let alone this was the god of war churches, a sequence 2 angel. But don't forget, this is a city directly under the jurisdiction of the Tranquility Cathedral. Even if it is an angel, as long as the other party dares to take action and do something irrational, they can completely suppress it with the reserve power here. Even if the other party has the gaze of a god, the goddess is also paying attention here. Nicholas Flamel maintained his faint smile, not showing excessive excitement, only a considerable curiosity, unsure of what the angel this warrior had encountered intended to do. It couldn't really come to blows, could it? If that were the case, his impression of the god of war would worsen even further. Not long ago, Badder Hare had given him and Tang Yijin a hard time in the spirit world, and he hadn't even had a chance to get revenge yet. How about stealing the other party's extraordinary characteristic, then impersonating them, returning to the Church of the God of War, and praying to their Lord? And, while he was at it, sending a bit of determinacy, contamination to their Lord? The angel of the God of War Church, who had been the most vociferous in arguing with the Church of the Evernight, paid no attention to the Pope of the Church of the Evernight or the angels hidden in the shadows watching the scene. From who knows where, he produced a longsword. It was a longsword with an ancient design, yet appearing exceptionally sharp, 2/3 as tall as Nicholas, its surface engraved with many complex and mysterious symbols. It seemed to be a key to opening some special location. Nicholas, with his rich knowledge of mysticism, had already guessed the sword's purpose. Alec White's words confirmed Nicholas's thoughts. This angel of the God of War Church calmly said to Nicholas Flamel, "The Lord wishes to see you." This sword was one of the keys to reaching the astral world, to reaching the God of War's kingdom. As long as a special ritual magic was performed, with the god's permission, then this longsword could function as a key. You could be an avatar or a marionette, and my lord wishes to see you now. Nicholas had already completed what Alec White hadn't said. As a top cryptographer, a top dreamweaver, an incarnation of all errors, Nicholas could very well understand the hidden meaning in the other party's words. Badder Hare wants to see me. Whether it was Tang, observing from Badder Hare's perspective through a marionette, or Nicholas Flamel himself, both wore rather strange expressions. As a Beyander's servant and a time worm who had been exposed to Badder Hare, they were clearly on the God of War's list of invitees. Of course, Nicholas's response was only a slight contemplation, followed by a simple and straightforward reply. No. They had given him a hard time before, and now they wanted to see him. Did they think they were cheap? Of course, if Badder Hare actively wanted to become his marionette, that would be another matter entirely. Tang had never manipulated a true god's spirit threads before, and he didn't know if there would be any special feedback. A true god as my marionette, isn't that very mystical? After hearing Nicholas's rather blunt refusal, the Sequence 2 honorific's originally calm face suddenly turned somewhat unsightly. He seemed a little incredulous. What are you refusing? You are refusing a true god's love, you will regret it, cough, cough, wrong script. The system's voice had finally lowered a little, not to the point of noise pollution. Tang rubbed his ears and turned his gaze once more to the astral world above. Badder Hare wants to see me? What does he want to see me for? To give me another stab? Involving true gods, divination, prophecy, and methods of observing the future were difficult to accurately grasp. Tang pondered for a moment, and could only attribute the cause of this problem to the chemical reaction that occurred after the collapse of the future him when Nicholas accommodated the uniqueness. Badder Hare's state may already have problems. At the level of gods, distance was the most useless unit of measurement. With the mystical influence brought about by the collapse of the future him at that time, the astral world where the gods were located must have been affected. Badder Hare had already suffered the hidden contamination of determinacy at that time. And after a period of evolution, regardless of the size of the impact, the fact that the gods themselves had problems would inevitably attract attention. Would he notice and value it? No, under the influence of determinacy and the power of fate, Even if the problem is discovered now, the outcome cannot be changed. After being rejected, the angel of the God of War Church had a gloomy face, but in the end, he didn't say anything or do anything excessive. Nicholas also skipped over this angel. He couldn't decide Badder Hare's affairs, but since they were future colleagues, some things could be discussed with Badder Hare in person, but not now, not by going in the other party's way. Now that the most important issues had been resolved, the next step was for the high-level members of the major churches to inquire about the philosophy of Miskatonic University itself, and to reach a consensus on Nicholas Flamel's attitude and strategy on certain matters. As saints who had already pushed open the door of divinity, their experiences were naturally quite rich, and they were already prepared for long-term discussions. However, this discussion did not take too much time. There was no need to divide new parishes, no need to spread the faith of this new god of deception, to consolidate anchors. The other party didn't seem to value anchors very much, and didn't intend to spread the faith of some people, like the faith of the Evernight. As the meeting reached its end, Nicholas was already preparing to leave when the King of Angels turned slightly, as if listening to something, then looked at the several high-level members of the major churches present. He took a few things out of his system space and said to them, "Oh, right, these are some reports submitted by your church's clergy, hoping you will respond. Regarding those clergy members who were still being softly imprisoned in Miskatonic University, whether they should accept the commission of Miskatonic University and sign the corresponding contracts." Those sitting here now were all high-level members, with the authority to respond. The saints of the Church of the Artisan, the Church of the Earth, the Church of Knowledge and Wisdom, the Church of the Eternal Sun, and the Church of the God of War all received the things written by their own clergy. Only the Pope of the Church of the Evernight and the Cardinal Bishop of the Church of Storms did not receive them. The Cardinal Bishop of the Church of Storms. What is it? Let me see. The Cardinal Bishop of the Church of Storms glanced over the things in the hands of the other church's saints, seeing that they were all intelligence questions about Miskatonic University, and there was nothing worth shamelessly trying to mooch. But something felt wrong. The Cardinal Bishop of the Church of Storms then turned his gaze to the Pope of the Church of the Evernight, who also hadn't received this thing. "What's the situation, old brother?" The Pope of the Church of the Evernight smiled. He just watched, it was better not to say anything. Chapter 224223 Cheer up. After receiving the consent form written by the higher-ups of the church, bearing some kind of occult symbol, the last batch of official Beyonders finally felt relieved and breathed a sigh of relief. As for the Beyonders from secret organizations, except for a very few who seemed to possess some kind of secret and were unwilling to stay, the others gritted their teeth and agreed. Rather than face unknown consequences, they were more willing to give up the benefits of those organizations and join Miskatonic University, which openly had angels and more opportunities and resources. Of course, if they had a choice, and if their respective organizations did not notice or did not mind, they would not mind striking a balance between Miskatonic University and their own organizations, without necessarily making a choice. Having an extra channel meant having an extra place to settle down in the future. As Beyonders who were not recognized by the authorities and grew wantonly in the dark corners, they were not necessarily 100% loyal to those secret organizations and were quite good at assessing the situation. The initial action drive the subsequent action. The official organizations had already confirmed their participation. Drive those secret organizations that were not too extreme to make a decision as well. This was a development that the Nameless One had foreseen. After all, everyone hoped to walk freely in the sun, rather than hiding in dark corners, worrying about this and that. Who doesn't want to walk in the sunshine? Among these secret organizations, there were also Beyonders who did not agree to this contract. The Nameless One at Miskatonic University was not surprised by this. The way to deal with such people was naturally very simple. Of course, there was no such thing as, those who obey me prosper. Those who oppose me perish. They were still quite democratic and free, and would trigger instant death verdicts as long as they disagreed. Miskatonic University respects everyone's choices and would never kill people for this reason. Turn them into mystical items and put them in their warehouse. Use them as the main ingredients for potions or strange sealed artifacts. Trade them with others or provide promotion assistance to their own Beyonders, or turn them into secret puppets, become parasites of the worm of time, become puppets of fate, become unfortunates, whose fates are replaced, have their hearts corroded by demons, become objects of manipulation for the audience, have children one after another, become nutrients for some kind of plant, be stuffed into mirrors, become shadows wandering by the river, and so on. At most, the Angel King, Nicola Flamel, would dig around in their heads and make them forget what they shouldn't know. It was very simple, just an Angel King taking action to ensure that certain secrets were not leaked. Yes, that's all. The nameless one of Miskatonic University smiled and answered the question from the Eternal Blaze Church personnel about what to do with those who are not prepared to sign the contract. The Eternal Blaze Church personnel who heard this answer. The clergy of other churches, wild beyonders and beyonders from secret organizations. Devil, are you a devil? Listen to what you're saying, listen. Putting aside that long list of things. Having a high sequence being of the seer pathway stir around in my brain. I can't even imagine that scene. A wild beyander shuddered involuntarily. He couldn't help but think of the young man with the monocle, warm smile, and black top hat, picking up a hook and stirring their brains, commenting on their brains while stirring. Just thinking about it made them feel like their sanity was dropping crazily and they were losing control. Yes, yes. The others couldn't help but nod in agreement. At this moment, they sincerely hoped that the few beyonders from the Storm Church could pass the exam quickly and enter here. If they refuse, what changes will occur after being treated like this? Putting aside other things, if the clergy of the Storm Church refused, they could also see what the Storm Church's reaction would be, and what their clergy would become. It was easier and simpler to exchange information between churches than to ask those secret organizations that were nowhere to be found. Who knew? The clergy of the Church of Knowledge and Wisdom on the side suddenly said with pity in their tone. No, they probably won't. Won't what? Won't refuse the contract. A cultivator from the Earth Mother Church, who was considered an acquaintance, asked curiously. He felt that this was not impossible. After all, the believers and beyonders of the Storm Church were known for their tyrant-like personalities. But the clergy of the Church of Knowledge and Wisdom only smiled. He said very calmly, as if stating a truth, and was particularly certain. I'm not saying that the believers of the tyrant won't refuse the contract. What I want to say is, they won't pass the test. What's the point of refusing the contract if they can't even pass the exam? Are they dreaming? Haha, they don't even have the chance to see the contract, so where do they get the chance to refuse? Of course, this was not discriminating against the believers of the storm or anything. The believers of the God of Knowledge and Wisdom only equally despised every guy with insufficient IQ. The beyonders of the other churches didn't know what to say for a moment. They rubbed their arms because of this joke that couldn't be colder. They felt like they were being despised along with them. The beyonders of the Church of Knowledge and Wisdom smiled once again. Very good, very consistent with the stereotype of the believers of this church. Tinan City, Khoi University. Wolf Conches, who was racking his brains to figure out what the ancient Hermes word written on the paper meant, suddenly shuddered all over, as if he had suddenly been mentioned by many people, making him unable to tell whether he was too cold or because his spirituality was reminding him that something abnormal was happening. Soon, Wolf Conches knew why he was shuddering. He raised his head, but saw a figure wearing a top hat and a matching tailcoat standing at the door of the classroom. That was the controller of Tinan City, the Angel of the Seer Pathway. Nicola Flamel. What is he doing here? Before this favorite of Storm could associate the other party's appearance with anything else, he saw the Angel of Tinan City show him a standard smile and signal him to come out. The puzzled Wolf Conches suddenly felt his scalp tingle. Although he didn't know what was going on, it was definitely not a good thing. This is a letter from your church's cardinal to you. Nicola Flamel said lightly, then took a few steps back, the smile on his face becoming more and more obvious. He said to Wolf Conches, who was obviously confused, aren't you going to open it and take a look? Oh. Wolf Conches didn't dare to disobey the angel's will, hurriedly disassembled the outer envelope of the letter, and pulled out the letter paper inside. His Eminence the Cardinal's letter to me. Nothing bad should happen. Then what's with his strange premonition? Could it be that his premonition was wrong? That's right, Beyonders of the Sailor Pathway are not good at divination and prophecy. Maybe it's some kind of stress reaction to seeing Nicola Flamel, this high-sequence angel? When the envelope was opened and the letter paper flattened, the words written on it with ink presented themselves to the eyes of this wind blessed. He felt as if a gust of wind swept out from the opened part of the letter paper. At the same time, a violent roar, seemingly carrying a trace of despair, seemed to penetrate the letter paper and rush towards the forehead of this wind blessed. Pass. Within a month. You must give me a passing grade, don't let me, see, this kind of thing. The cardinal of the Storm Church, a high-sequence saint, didn't want to see Nicola Flamel leave him behind. Don't leave this saint of the Storm Church behind for the second time for this reason. Wolf Conch's froze in place. Through the letter paper, he seemed to see the hair standing on end, like a church saint about to meet an irresistible lightning strike. The undisguised emotions of that true demigod. His brain crashed for a moment, and then turned pale with a whoosh. It's over, cheer up, you have one more chance in a month. Nicola Flamel smiled and patted the wind-blessed shoulder, sincerely. The newest uptack small uptack said uptack is uptack first uptack published. Otherwise, he would have to talk to the Storm Church about whether they couldn't find a single person with brains among their believers and clergy. This would give him, the King of Angels, a bad stereotype. Potion making, the essence of instigation, the teaching of acting methods. Monster studies, in-depth learning of linguistics, learning ritual magic, general knowledge courses, and the considerable amount of physical education in daily life, as well as frequent visits to Miskatonic University through the connection between Miskatonic University and Tingen University to study basic knowledge such as physics, chemistry, biology, and mathematics. Busy things quickly filled Archer Lancaster's daily life. His roommate, Regulus, as a warrior, was the same. The busy and fulfilling life allowed these two roommates, who were not in the same bishop's building and had different god pathways, to only exchange some interesting things about their respective courses when they rested at night. When Regulus learned that Sequence 7 of the Assassin pathway and Sequence 4 of the Hunter pathway would have some bad changes, this Forsaken Empire half-giant was even a little ashamed. The general knowledge courses at Miskatonic University not only describe the various abilities of the low sequences in the 22 god pathways, but also many anecdotes, such as the evil god, the primordial witch, who used to be a man. I didn't know about this kind of thing, otherwise I would have stopped you at that time. Archer became a Beyander in the dormitory, in front of Regulus, who was already a Beyander at the time. But this Forsaken person didn't know that a person who becomes an assassin would undergo a gender change at Sequence 7. Regardless of whether they are male or female, they will become female at the Sequence 7 witch level. He didn't make corresponding organizations. Regulus apologized somewhat shamefully. Archer had already accepted reality, and an elegant and polite smile appeared on his handsome face. This is not your fault, Regulus, it was my own recklessness that led to such a result. It's okay, when I push open the door of divinity, even if I have experienced Sequence 7 and temporarily become a woman, I can still turn back into a man at Sequence 4. He didn't know whether he was comforting the half-giant in front of him or comforting himself. But, Regulus said with some worry, then what should you do with your acting? Although the teacher said, you are just acting, but Sequence 6 of the Assassin pathway isn't called joy. How should that be acted out, after becoming a woman with a man? What, women and women? This was an angle that Regulus, a pure Forsaken Empire person, had not considered. Archer was speechless for a moment. He was poked in the lung by his roommate's words, choked, and didn't know what to say for a long time. Regulus then realized that he seemed to have poked several times on people's wounds, and pinched his nose awkwardly, saying in a somewhat muffled voice, sorry, Archer. It's okay. Archer took a breath, still with a smile on his face, but the exhaustion and the faint, ready-to-die flavor revealed in it were also obvious. Unless I owe a huge sum of money, or just stay at the Sequence 8 level, otherwise, these are all things I will have to face next. I just need to think in advance about how to do these things. And among their class of assassins, there were indeed people who went to the school's Dark Watcher for help, analyzing the corresponding extraordinary characteristics. That was already a Sequence 8 instigator. A Beyander at the Sequence 8 level, even if they analyzed the corresponding extraordinary characteristics through the Dark Watcher and avoided becoming a woman at Sequence 7, and took other pathways, they could only reach the Sequence 7 level at most. Of course, Archer also learned that the school also has professional handling methods for this kind of student. Whether it is a middle to high sequence Beyander of the apothecary pathway, or helping to restore through high-level, high-status ritual magic, or asking a miracle inventor to perform a miracle, they can restore the spirit and flesh to the state they were in before drinking the potion. But in this case, the reward that this former instigator has to pay is also an astronomical figure. The school is not a free charity organization. The gifts given by fate have already been marked with a price. So, let's just go down, there's no other way. If you want to continue on the path of the extraordinary, there is only such a path. Life is short, why not give it a try? That high-ranking witch said so. With a charming voice, she left such a sentence in the ears of all the assassins and witch reserve members in the first class. Although your general knowledge courses will explain this phenomenon, please rest assured that the identities of you witches and hunters are kept secret from the outside world. As long as you don't reveal your sequence, no one can guess whether you were once male or female. Of course, if you are looking for excitement, then pretend I didn't say anything. The path to advancement for low to mid-sequence Beyonders isn't arduous. With a clear understanding of the acting method, the digestion of potions is merely a matter of time. Miskatonic University possesses certain unique qualities that can simulate various scenarios and characters, aligning with the majority of God's pathways and sequences. This helps students digest potions as quickly as possible, enhancing their strength and propelling them forward on the distant path of the extraordinary. Within the university, there are numerous channels to purchase and exchange low to mid-sequence potion formulas, extraordinary characteristics, and supplementary materials. As long as one has the desire to advance, while it's not guaranteed to open the door to divinity, becoming a mid-sequence Beyander isn't too difficult. This book is first released on TWKAN.com, the entire network. Now that the major Orthodox God churches have officially confirmed the rationality of Miskatonic University's existence and the attitude of the Angel King, Nicola Flamel, the investigation into matters related to Nicola Flamel has naturally been delayed. For the churches, faith in the gods themselves is the foundation upon which they stand in the real world. Nicola Flamel's pathway isn't adjacent to those of Storms, Earth, Night, Warrior, Reader, or Sun besides the Craftsman Church, which gave him more than one cold shoulder due to the suspicion that Nicola Flamel has high-sequence seer companions. The churches have no need to offend or provoke him if there are no conflicts in their faith districts or anchor points. Especially since their Lord hasn't expressed anything resembling a divine decree. Even the most vehement angel of the God of War Church has to suppress the many thoughts in their heart and express the most basic respect to Nicola Flamel. Naturally, befriending such an angel king is also a beneficial thing for the churches. For example, if they encounter Ammon, the former blasphemer, they wouldn't need to immediately call upon their own angels to deal with it. It is believed that Nicola Flamel would be happy to devour Ammon's avatars and reclaim the extraordinary characteristics of his pathway. And now, they only need to wait for the church's clergy to return from that university, which is of course closely related to Tingen but whose location is unknown, to learn the specific information about that university. Oh, except for the Storm Church. They certainly don't have any schadenfreude. In the principal's office, Tang retracted his gaze from peering into the depths of the spirit world, rubbed his forehead, and relieved the fatigue caused by prolonged observation and the intense consumption of spirituality. As a miracle inventor, Tang quickly used the core authority of the miracle inventor, wish, to fully restore his spirituality by wishing to himself, and once again became energetic. He then turned his attention to a large sand table placed on the desk. This large sand table doesn't exist in physical form. It's a projection of Euclidean space onto the real world, representing, if you had to say, a miniature, real-time dynamic representation of the entire planet's surface laid flat and unfolded. This includes not only the spirit world, the underworld, the abyss, the mirror world, and various other dimensions that have clear physical or mystical connections with the real world, but also some tunnels extending into the Earth and the sealed eastern continent, all presented on the miniature sand table in front of Tang. Except for some special areas that obviously have problems, where even observation through the authority of Euclidean space is risky, or places like the Western continent, which are hidden by the celestial worthy of good fortune, the entire world's condition, including the vague images of the star deities' kingdoms, is revealed. As an angel who simultaneously masters observation and miracles, and the grafting domain, it's not surprising to be able to create something like this. Indeed, it's not surprising that high-sequence beings can create anything. I admire the undying bird ancestor Glaris and blood emperor Alista Tudor a bit. One created the underworld, and the other created the underground trier. Both are talented. Tang propped his chin with one hand and said to Brooks, the former Bishop of War, who had now advanced to Weather Warlock. Brooks had many strangely colored flags at hand, and he was currently concentrating on observing the entire world's projection. He didn't look up when he heard this, but nodded to indicate that he was listening. This War Bishop, who had already advanced to Sequence 2 and was preparing for the Sequence 1 ritual, also needed to grasp the overall situation of the world as a basic skill of a Weather Warlock and former Bishop of War. If you ask me, it's already pretty good to maintain this state in the present day, where the power of the primordial one is constantly weakening. Tang looked at the many sands on the sand table that hid deep passages seemingly leading to unknown blocks and shook his head helplessly. This is still 1,000 years before the time period when the original story took place. He really can't imagine what the world will look like when Klein descends, the god of war falls, and the power of the primordial one is weakened to the point where it can no longer resist those outer gods. Thinking of that time, when the sand table was as leaky as a sieve, and the bizarre tentacles and screams of people giving birth constantly spread from various locations, Tang felt a little nauseous and wanted to relieve the urge to curse in his heart. Damn it, why couldn't he have transmigrated a few years later? He didn't even read the sequel to Lord of the Mysteries, and he doesn't know what the situation will be like when the end of the world arrives. Better, or worse, but this isn't the world in the book. Everyone is a flesh and blood person to Tang, not something that can be summed up in a light-hearted sentence like, many people died in the face of the arrival of the Old Ones. However, with Lord of the Mysteries and Adam, who can at least become half an Old One, holding up the fort, plus a goddess who has a preliminary grasp and will definitely become an Old One in the later stages, it can't be said that there's no chance of winning. Tang hugged his knees and curled up in the high-backed chair, watching the constantly changing situation on the sand table in front of him. Perhaps I can try to see the situation by observing the future, but that would also be a burden for me. Fate is disordered and chaotic. This is the essence of the key of light, that is, the monster pathway. This is also the essence of fate. Fixing the future and forming destiny itself contradicts the infinitely chaotic nature of fate. The sequence 1 of the blessing pathway he is on, Determina C, doesn't mean that everything can be fixed and made to happen. Fate is an undulating line. Fixing the end point still has the possibility of breaking during the weaving process, and once it breaks, even if I am a sequence 1 mystery keeper, it will be a fatal blow. At the same time, the stronger the constant things, the more pollution the future has on the past, and the greater the consequences. This is equivalent to a value investment. The higher the value investment of the future in the past, the more likely it is that not only will the principal not be recovered once the product explodes, but he may even lose everything he has. For example, the god of war in the future did not go towards the future he had fixed, did not die, and was not even made into a secret puppet. He was merely killed by the goddess of the night, who took away the uniqueness and the extraordinary characteristics of sequence 1 of the warrior pathway. After being fixed with the destiny of secret puppetization, because the ending does not match the destiny, the collapse of the destiny is very likely to cause Tang, who has already fixed this destiny, to lose control on the spot. He must die immediately, sacrificing a chance to be resurrected from the dead, to avoid the damage caused by the inability to fix the destiny. At the same time, this will also have an irreparable impact on his future self. That future self, the embodiment of all destiny, it's okay if small destinies cannot happen, but once a part that can disintegrate the main stem cannot be fixed, the consequences are unimaginable. Destiny is an ideal state, interwoven with countless pasts, presents, and futures, just like the Schrödinger's attribute of a cat box. Before reaching that established future, no one can assert that that future will inevitably happen. And maintaining the inevitable occurrence of destiny is also my mission. Inconsistencies in time and space, misalignments and chaos in time and space can also bring terrible consequences. No ability is unsolvable, and no strength is without a price. Tang sighed and gave up the plan to directly observe that future that even he didn't know. Although I am already sequence 1, I still cannot withstand that level of pollution originating from the future. So, it's all because he transmigrated too early. If the second part had already come out before he transmigrated, then he could really know more information and make more preparations. Ah, damn it, a car running a red light. Tang gritted his teeth as he thought about his death in his previous life. After his emotions calmed down, he turned his gaze back to the sand table in front of him. He saw that the weather warlock Brooks had already placed many flags of different colors in different areas of the East, South, and North continents. The investigators under the jurisdiction of Miskatonic University are not all our students and secret puppets. Extraordinary individuals from major churches can also serve in this role. While carrying out the Miskatonic University teaching plan, through the observation authority of Euclidean space and the grafting authority of the occult servitor, Tang is also constantly adjusting the current state of the Crimson Campus at the bottom of the never-ending theater. This is a long process. Every symbolic meaning of the real world in the Euclidean space must correspond one-to-one, and the grafting authority of the occult servitor can make up for the lack of interference authority in the Euclidean space. Otherwise, some changes that occur in the Crimson Campus will not be able to synchronously respond to the situation in the real world. In Tang's plan, by having investigators explore corresponding areas simulated and deepened by the Crimson Campus, he can solve the troubles in reality. This will not only diversify the tasks but also reduce church casualties to a certain extent and deepen the impact on corresponding issues. At the same time, investigators can absorb wild extraordinary individuals from various places and members of those hidden organizations, which can deepen and thoroughly affect the local area, thereby achieving the goal. And this can also serve as a way to digest the occult servitor's acting. The occult servitor is an existence that serves the occult. For Tang, the entire Crimson Campus now serves as a collection of the concept of occult. The cooperation between the occult servitor and Euclidean space is really good. It is indeed a sequence with intersecting authorities. Tang rested his cheek on his hand and saw that the weather warlock Brooks had already divided the locations of many branch campuses of Miskatonic University, so he once again moved his gaze away and looked out the window. The Red Priest should have some problems. Both Elista Tudor and Nether Emperor Salinger were true gods of the Hunter pathway, and their endings were all madness. The former caused a big mess during the Fourth Epoch Four Emperors War and is still repairing it, while the latter is his own grandfather with whom he has blood relations. Ah, die, just die already. Brooks stopped planting flags and looked at Tang. Tang withdrew his gaze. The more gods we have on our side, the better. The sooner the Red Priest appears, the better, of course. He has ready-made candidates here. Next, he will visit the royal families of various countries in an orderly manner and take the extraordinary characteristics of the conqueror through trading or forced trading. At that time, he will fight against the primordial moon, who was obviously severely damaged during the Pale disaster. If he has the ability, he will naturally eat the primordial moon as well. Then he can synthesize a cataclysmic disaster, root of calamity, a golden legend card. How cool is that? Ah, as for whether it will disrupt Adam's plans, who cares? Could nurturing a 3-in-1 hotpot bring him any benefits? He has not fixed, observed, or predicted the corresponding destiny, so he doesn't need to consider this issue at all. But speaking of which, that 3-in-1 hotpot is still staying underground in Backland. When should I give him a surprise attack and take him away for Owen? As a high-level being in the domain of death, if Owen's small underworld has such an evil spirit, it should be able to improve his self-protection ability, right? On the South Continent, the Bayam Empire is splitting, fighting fiercely with the Highland Kingdom that split off, and there are also natives who do not believe in the god of death and Kotar acting as agitators.
Although the dark demonic wolf Kotar has been stationed in the South Continent for nearly 300 years, and has recently received the grace of the observer, and become a false, occult servitor, the situation there is still not optimistic. The god of Bound of the Rose School has a problem. The divine aberration Sierra is descending, and indulgence and bloody sacrifices are gradually becoming mainstream. The former church of the god of death in the Bayam Empire, now the spirit religion, is also divided. People who believe in and worship the god of death and are trying to revive the god of death have made progress in the artificial god of death faction, and seem to have located something left behind by Nether Emperor Salinger. Judging from the situation on the sand table, the Mother Tree of Desire and the fallen Mother Goddess are the two outer gods that most deeply affect the real world. I still have to speed up the progress a bit. Sierra, who should have died in the womb after being sniped by multiple angels at the time, has descended, but is not in good condition. Maybe I can still recover a portion of the divine aberration's characteristics. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Speaking of the Rose School of Thought in the Southern Continent, the biggest problem now lies with the being they believe in. The Bound Angel is a Sequence 1 god of the prisoner pathway, and based on the current situation, it consists of two Sequence 1 uniquenesses and the uniqueness of that pathway, making it the Angel King of this pathway. In the current Fifth Epoch, before the gods left the real world to block the loopholes in the astral world, it could be considered top tier, extremely close to the level of a true god. A truly significant figure standing at a height that most people and extraordinary individuals could never imagine in their lifetime. However, like the demon monarch Fuboti, this bound angel, the Angel King of the prisoner pathway, is now being manipulated and influenced by the Desire Mother Tree. Within this world barrier, which has already become like a sieve with loopholes everywhere, the Desire Mother Tree, a great old one standing at the pinnacle of evil gods, has infiltrated to such an extent that it is almost impossible to isolate its influence through ordinary means. At the same time, the Desire Mother Tree is a great existence standing on the prisoner and criminal pathways. Before someone controls the corresponding shadow world and reaches the level of outer god dominator, the prisoner and criminal pathways are the most likely to be affected by this great existence. It is inevitable that the bound angel is affected as a result. If it were in the distant second or third epoch, it would be fine. The prisoners and criminals of that era didn't even need to consider too much the issue of the primordial will awakening within them. The initial barrier was resilient enough to almost guarantee that all outer god pathway extraordinary individuals wouldn't need to worry too much about their divinity overcoming their self. But that's not possible now. After the barrier developed loopholes, extraordinary individuals of the prisoner, criminal, farmer, apothecary, and other god pathways belonging to the outer gods will instinctively be affected by the pinnacle of that pathway. The closer to the end of the world, the stronger this infiltration will be. The barrier can block the main bodies of those outer gods, but now it can't block them from infiltrating some of their power. The bound angel and the demon monarch are suspected of being corrupted by the Desire Mother Tree, thus falling into depravity, and then being captured, constantly either in a state of various desires erupting or saying, "I want to have a child with you." And while he was still preparing for the Sequence 3 ancient scholar ritual, the god-spawn Sarah had already been born. At that time, the gloomy wolf Kotar, the secret order's Zeratu, Nicholas Flamel, who was only Sequence 1 and had not accommodated the uniqueness, the death executor of the spiritual church, and many other angels, as well as the temperance faction angels of the Rose School of Thought, cooperated fully. With the reminder of Nicholas Flamel and many other marionettes who were familiar with history and destiny, and could also be considered to have read the original work, the forces of the Southern Continent united. The angels were dispatched one after another. They prepared to strike the god-spawned Sierra most severely when he was born and when the bound angel was in his weakest state, to prevent this god-child, who clearly possessed the power, gifts, and aura of the Desire Mother Tree, from being born and to let him die in the womb. If possible, leaving the bound angel behind, and returning him to extraordinary characteristics and uniqueness if he could not be purified. Cutting off the Desire Mother Tree's infiltration into the real world was also one of the policies at the time. But in the end, the plan failed, or rather, only partially succeeded.
The Desire Mother Tree seemed to have been prepared for this. After sacrificing many members of the hedonist faction of the Rose School of Thought who had been affected by it, the successful birth of the god-spawned Syra caused the state of many angels to undergo fundamental problems. Even the marionettes who used the bionic marionette module to stabilize their state and would not easily have problems experienced various errors and unpredictable emotional fluctuations, resulting in injuries. This forced the action to abort the god-spawned Syra to be suspended. However, the Temperance faction of the Rose School of Thought also took the opportunity to clean up some of the Rose School of Thought members who had been affected by the Desire Mother Tree, and purged many people in the Highland Kingdom who had faith in the evil god. Although they failed to successfully prevent the birth of the god-spawned Syra, the state of this god-child was also not good. Under the siege of many angels, the prematurely born god-spawned Syra did not fully inherit all the power from the bound angel and the Desire Mother Tree. He is now missing, and has disappeared along with the bound angel. Even the observation of Euclidean space yields nothing. Tang and Nicholas Zaratu guessed, although the god-spawned Syra was successfully born, it did not reach the level expected by the Desire Mother Tree. Being able to weaken it is always good. For Tang, who was only sequence 4 at the time, this situation was already quite good. The Rose School of Thought is deep, and the water in the southern continent is also deep. Only when the water is muddy is it easy to fish. Now, Tang, who has become a sequence 1 archangel, is ready for a new wave of stirring sticks. Establish a super-large ritual magic in the southern continent that can cover the entire southern continent. Monitor the Rose School of Thought. Search for the traces of the bound angel and the god-spawned Syra, discover problems in advance, block the Desire Mother Tree's erosion, and at the same time, prepare for certain things in the future. All of these require people. Although marionettes are very useful, and after the mass production of the bionic marionette module, the mystics of the secret order have to kill hundreds of spiritual worms every day as reserves for the bionic marionette module. And the marionettes with spiritual worms are doing their best to make new marionettes every day. It is impossible for everyone in this world to become his marionette. At the same time, cultivating marionettes and helping them reach a level where they will not easily die when released is also a long process. Although it can be stabilized through gifts, this only reduces the consumption of extraordinary characteristics. To send more people to the southern continent, set up a super-large ritual magic that can cover a continent, etc., all take time. Sighing, Tang supported his cheek, but I can afford to spend this time. At least longer than Rosal the Great and Klein are preparing. The end of the world. If it really is invincible, I can only think of ways to take my family and leave. If this is my destiny, then I must prepare in advance. He is a sequence 1 of the seer pathway. Even if he leaves Earth, he will at most be chased by those outer gods, not to the point of fighting to the death. For him, at that time, leaving the sight of the outer gods, discarding unnecessary things, finding a suitable galaxy, using the door, error, and seer, combined with various low and mid-sequence extraordinary abilities, plus Euclidean space and the system, it is not necessary to fight to the death with those outer gods on Earth. As a true transmigrator, not a remnant of the old days, Tang has feelings for this planet, but he really can't live and die with this planet. Moreover, he doesn't have too much demand for anchors. Even Owen and the others, the marionettes can be loaded into the system warehouse and carried with him. With a large base and pure faith, Owen and the others will not be so completely crazy. But escaping from here is the worst option. The universe is vast, and those outer gods might not necessarily catch up. However, venturing into the universe also has countless uncertainties. If possible, I'd rather return to my world under possible circumstances. After briefly indulging in a pipe dream of returning to his own world with extraordinary abilities and achieving world peace, Tang had to start considering the reality. Speaking of dragging family along, an idea struck him, and a spiritual premonition reminded him of something. He looked out the window again. Tang remembered his previous inspiration. It seemed like there was something dirty in the Fenipot kingdom. Next, he was preparing the advancement ceremony for Olsong and the other apprentices on the Seafarer pathway. Sequence 3 Demigod. It seemed like there was something there that could help him. I'm going out for a while. After you've taken care of things, just give them to Nicola. He will arrange for someone to go to the southern continent. Having said that, before Weather Warlock Brooks could say anything, Tang's figure gradually faded and disappeared from the spot. He grafted space, using Euclidean space as a springboard between the spirit world and the real world, directly teleporting to the territory of the Fenipot Kingdom, to a port city called Santa. Without lingering too much, after his figure appeared at the street entrance here, Tang teleported to another place once again. As a Sequence 1 angel, if Tang didn't want people to know about his appearance, no one would know. The Fenipot Kingdom had not yet experienced the impact of the Betrayal War. The God of Knowledge and Wisdom and the Earth Mother jointly ruled this area. But this was just a port city. Even if it had some special characteristics, there wouldn't be angels constantly monitoring the issues here. With the main body not here, even noticing would be difficult, let alone stopping an angel with the authority of observation and grafting. Euclidean space and the mysteries attendant inherently have the effect of concealment. After using Euclidean space as a springboard once again, Tang arrived at his destination. This was a dark room, seemingly a basement within a certain building. When Tang's figure was outlined, what appeared before him was a stone platform covered with mystical patterns. The wonderful, mystically meaningful patterns on the stone platform connected the ground, walls, and ceiling here, forming one peculiar symbol after another. Symbols of the door and the time worm. Tang, with a solid foundation in mysticism, naturally knew what these symbols represented, and at this moment, movement came from behind him. Tang stood in place, not hiding. He slowly turned around, gazing into the lightless darkness behind him. There, a figure had appeared at some unknown time. Even though the room was extremely dark, Tang could still clearly see the source of the movement. It was a figure wearing a black, pointed soft hat, a mage's robe of the same color, a broad forehead, a thin face, and a monocle made of crystal in his left eye socket. As this figure was outlined from the lightless darkness, Tang snapped his fingers. The dim, unnatural light immediately illuminated the not-so-large basement, but the commotion here still didn't attract anyone's attention. A weakened version of the embryonic form of a divine kingdom silently unfolded, concealing what Tang wanted to conceal. Amon. Tang wasn't surprised that Amon was here, but he was a little surprised. You're not hiding from me. He even took the initiative to appear. Why should I hide from you? Amon asked in return. He smiled, leisurely pinching his monocle, and said in a leisurely tone, my main body has already hidden itself. Killing him would be useless. How lazy, are all you Amons so unique? Tang's mouth twitched, but he still didn't want to talk to this kind of dirty thing. He simply asked directly. What is sealed here? What is the big trouble that you haven't been able to solve? The problem that the two of the 5 great families of the Tudor Empire in the Fourth Epoch, the Angel King of the Door Pathway and the Angel King of the Thief Pathway, couldn't solve and could only seal here was obviously not small. And with the main body already killed twice, Amon's clone wasn't even prepared to escape. What was he planning to do? Tang, who suffered from Amon monocle phobia syndrome, even knowing that Amon posed no threat to him now, really didn't want to deal with this gloomy guy. None of the high-ranking members of the Turtle Trio are good people. What a ruthless host, the system silently lamented. But what kind of bad person could a host be who even cursed himself? Guess? Amon only smiled in response to Tang's question. Tang. But before Tang could directly turn him into a secret puppet and forcibly channel him, Tang heard this former Angel King clone say, I'm lying to you. Not far from here, not far for a mysteries attendant, there. Hiding something that came from outside. Something from outside? What is it? Was the outside Amon was talking about beyond the barrier? Tang narrowed his eyes, scanning this thief. Amon nodded. Just as he was about to continue speaking, the hand pinching his monocle suddenly stopped. He looked at Tang and saw this mysteries attendant giving him an internationally friendly gesture. Then, this figure wearing a black, pointed soft hat slowly took off the monocle from his left eye socket and placed it into his right eye socket. Under circumstances where abilities allow, who would be willing to deal with a deceiver they'd offended? If he wasn't waiting for Nicola's clone to come over, he wouldn't have bothered talking to this guy. It's more comfortable to look at it this way. Tang withdrew the internationally friendly gesture and asked Nicola, who had taken over Amon, what was Amon watching here? What are the things that Mr. Dor and Amon sealed? Nicola, who had eaten Amon's clone here, pinched his monocle, seemingly deciphering the various information left behind by his unreliable predecessor. After pausing for a few seconds, this new Angel King said, a spaceship.
A spaceship. Tang's mind was full of question marks.
Was it appropriate to put such a modern word in this medieval era? Nicola continued to appraise it, carefully choosing his words. The spaceship seems to be carrying an unformed black hole. Tang. Wait, how did it suddenly change from the Mysticism channel to the into Science channel? Also, can a black hole be loaded into a spaceship? What the heck is this? Is this reasonable? This is obviously unreasonable. Tang muttered while taking Nicola along, traversing between the spirit world and Euclidean space, starting from the port of Santa, heading towards the sealed land jointly created by Mr. Dor, Bethely Abraham, and Amon. There is an ancient sacrificial ritual here in Santa called the Sea Prayer Ritual. It is said to have been passed down from the Tudor Empire period of the Fourth Epoch. It signifies praying for the sea's favor, blessing this sea area with favorable weather for a period of time. And unlike the folk legends, which only possess symbolic meaning and are traditional festivals in various places, the Santa ritual clearly possesses a certain degree of mystical concepts, capable of playing an important role in some events. The core of this ritual is to extract a portion of energy from the sealed land through ritual means, forming a power similar to grace, sealing the power of the sealed object through the ritual, weakening the sealed entity, ensuring the integrity of the seal, and preventing more internal mutations.
The one who created this thing is not a local evil god, nor an ancient god, nor some kind of source quality. It wasn't made by the likes of Alistair Tudor or the ancient death god, Grelgary. It is indeed from the outside world, from the starry sky.
This was created by an outer god called the Overstar Sovereign, sent to Earth through a barrier crack caused by a certain past event. As for how the Overstar Sovereign created a black hole, his mind was about to explode, suddenly shifting him from the vast world of mysticism to realism. But thinking about it, I can nuke the world in the historical gaps. It's not a big deal for an outer god with authority in this area to create a black hole and then send this thing in. Now that Nicola has devoured Amon, he naturally inherited all of Amon's experience, knowledge, and thoughts. This is the rightful position of an Angel King, but Amon didn't resist at all, seemingly waiting for him to come.
It always gives me a strange feeling, like delicious food being delivered to my door. I thought it was a good thing, but then I realized the delivery person was secretly putting feces inside.
Nicola habitually pinched Amon's monocle. He wore Amon's appearance, but his voice sounded deeper.
This Angel King slowly said, your descriptions are sometimes quite terrifying.
I didn't detect any fluctuations in fate, and there doesn't seem to be any deliberate arrangement. This Amon clone is already the biggest light bulb. After you accommodated the uniqueness, you inherently possess a strong ability to interfere with and perceive beyonders of this pathway. It's only natural that you would come to investigate when there's an anomaly with Amon here. There's no need for anyone to arrange it.
But this doesn't mean Adam isn't watching. Perhaps this is also one of that fanatic's schemes. What I'm more curious about now is, what is the Overstar Sovereign trying to do by sending such a black hole in? Is it preparing to tear the entire world apart from the inside and then allow the original to be born?
Tang thought for a moment, but couldn't figure anything out. They had already stopped at a place corresponding to the real world. A place filled with dense fog and exaggerated waves that seemed capable of creating 100-foot-high surges. The sky here was incomparably gloomy, and the howling wind and giant waves were the main melody. The pitch-black sea gave people a natural sense of oppression and indescribable fear, as if some monster that no one had ever seen before was lurking beneath the sea, ready to emerge from the sea at any moment, surrounded by wind, lightning, and waves, ready to devour people. At the same time, Tang, who had a slight case of thalassophobia, stopped looking at the things observed from Euclidean space. The mist and giant waves here formed a large outer shell of the seal, preventing ordinary people from entering the core area of the seal. After a little distinguish, Tang discovered the essence of this place in the space and those concepts lurking in the real world. This space is filled with a collection of certain information from door and time worm. It also exudes various mystical concepts including sealing, space, and stealing. These concepts have been deposited for an unknown amount of time. Obviously, the sea prayer ritual in Santa has been held for a long time. He observed it for a moment, and then directly stepped over the outermost layer of the seal. Nicola Flamel followed closely behind, and after crossing that seemingly intangible, untouchable, and invisible outer shell of the seal, the surrounding turbulent waves and the sky's lightning and thunder, as well as a dark and dull sea surface, all disappeared. He and Nicola entered a blue, calm sea area. This is the core area of the seal. The sky was slightly dim. Despite it being noon, only wisps of light filtered through the sky, as if blocked by frosted glass, not appearing dazzling. Just like Mr. Door can open doors in Euclidean space can also open doors in the seals created by Mr. Door. In the authority of Door, Tang and Mr. Door are equally matched. However, the outer layer of the seal is quite easy to pass through. The seals from Mr. Door on that spaceship in the core might not be so easy to deal with. After entering this sea area as calm as a sapphire, Tang's projection appeared in the real world. His gaze looked towards the seabed of his current location. Beneath the calm sea surface was a blank sea area with almost no living creatures. It seemed that all life here had been cleared in advance. Tang didn't even find any fish. It seems that in this space, if Mr. Door and Eamon hadn't been idle and also done some processing, it would be the problem of the sealed object itself, which would periodically clear the surrounding life, thus creating this almost barren environment. Through observation, Tang could also easily see the seabed, the spaceship from outer space sealed by Mr. Door and Eamon on the seabed, as Nicola said. Before seeing the real thing, Tang couldn't help but be curious. But after seeing the real thing, while Tang's curiosity was satisfied, he couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. It was a behemoth. The silver-gray unknown metal shell looked cold and abnormal, like a spindle stuck in the seabed, missing its front end, seamlessly fitting together, without any traces of splicing or polishing. This was not the disc-shaped spaceship Tang had imagined, but it was still full of high-tech style and incompatible with Earth. Who could create such a thing? Those alien civilizations that focus on the technology side. The Overstar Sovereign, an outer god with a strong connection to concepts such as black holes and celestial bodies. The sum of the celestial body concept. Overstar, the supernova of a supernova explosion. Current descriptions and information about outer gods in the world are not plentiful, especially records related to them. In the mystical world where knowledge itself possesses danger, those records containing the outer gods such as Fallen Mother Goddess, Desire Mother Tree, Ring of Destiny, Primal Hunger, are infectious and maddening knowledge themselves. Such information is toxic and difficult to pass down in a normal way. Moreover, not many can even perceive the existence of those outer gods. And in an era where the barrier's power is still strong, powerful existences at the top of the sequence, like the ancient sun god, may have recorded and observed them. The highest classified information within the 7 major churches should also involve them. His understanding of those outer gods is not deep either. Tang thought for a moment and decided to ask the night church later, to look at their information about the starry sky and first understand the situation outside. Amidst the swirling thoughts, standing in front of the sealed core, the enormous silver-gray spaceship, Tang, through the perspective of Euclidean space, put on the mosaic glasses for observing stars and clearly saw the scene inside. Strange passages, one after another, small monster being gestated or already dead, poisonous gas, messy metal devices with unknown specific functions, and a patch of darkness. A darkness that seems to suck in even the line of sight, a darkness that even light cannot escape. It is indeed a mystical black hole in gestation. In the mosaic glasses for observing stars, even Tang, as a sequence 1 seer, still saw countless tiny mosaics filling that place, seemingly blocking something. Tang pondered for a moment and looked at Nicola. "I'll go in and take a look." Nicola nodded. He was also preparing to have his main body come over.
Tang did not rely on the high-dimensional characteristics of Euclidean space to directly touch that black hole from which even light could not escape.
From a physics perspective, an object with sufficient mass can significantly affect the operation of time and space. A black hole itself is a singularity with infinite density and infinitely small volume, formed by the collapse of a star. And the feeling that mystical black hole gives me is a misconception that even things not belonging to the scientific side, such as fate, sight, and thought, are being drawn away as well. The corresponding area in Euclidean space was also a patch of darkness. A little troublesome, but not a big problem. Tang first distanced himself from this spaceship, and then reached out to pull an image from the gaps of history. Tang, wearing a beige knitted top and linen trousers appeared, and then this Tang continued to pull an image from the gaps of history. With sufficient spirituality, a seer can pull quite a few helpers. After the third Tang appeared, the first Tang that was pulled out hid in the gaps of history. Tang stood in Euclidean space, and the second historical projection appeared in the real world, next to the huge, silver-gray behemoth. As a diviner, divination is not omnipotent, and magicians do not perform unprepared shows. Master Luo's experience tells us that we must be careful and cautious when facing Sequence 8 Beyonders without a marionette, as we may be counter-killed, let alone facing a mystical black hole with unknown specific circumstances. After transferring his main consciousness to the second image from the gaps of history, Tang took out something from the system space. Engraved on it was half of an eye without pupils and half of a twisted line, the fool's symbol. It was a translucent mask. The uniqueness of the diviner pathway, once possessed by the angel king Antigonus. Now, it was taken out by Tang from the system space. After Tang's historical projection put on this translucent mask, the will of the heavenly lord of good fortune seemed to show signs of activation, but it was quickly slapped by the giant tree that had already grown out of the spiritual body from the same historical projection. Plus, I myself am an image from the gaps of history. The observer, constant, the system's suppression, and the heavenly lord's contamination hidden within the uniqueness are close to zero for me. After putting on the mask, Tang reached out to pull a new image from the gaps of history. After advancing to Sequence 1 Seer, the limitation of only being able to pull 3 angel-level historical projections during the Sequence 2 Miracle Invoker period was naturally lifted. As long as one could withstand the consumption of spirituality, then a seer could pull as many helpers as possible. He separately grabbed Nicola Flamel, an angel king whose projection did not involve uniqueness, but was just a 2+0 projection, and also pulled out Conqueror Brooks from the future, and then pulled out Klein Moretti wearing a half-top silk hat. 4 Sequence 1 historical projections, I don't know if they can handle it. If it really doesn't work, I'll pull out gold coins, and then pull out a complete hermit to directly hide the things inside. After everyone was in position, Tang reached out and touched the surface of the huge silver-gray object. This was where Mr. Door's seal was located. The things inside were extremely terrifying, and Tang was not prepared to take the correct passage. He planned to directly open a door on this spaceship, and then just take a bunch of angels in. Countless illusory doors seemed to unfold in front of Tang, and the invisible sealing power rejected Tang's entry. The things inside wanted to come out, and the people outside wanted to go in, but this seal was extremely powerful and difficult to destroy by ordinary means, crossing and ignoring, and was completely different from the outer shell that prevented ordinary people from accidentally entering. Tang didn't waste words, and he wasn't prepared to spend a lot of time wasting on analyzing Mr. Door's seal. Tang directly took something from the image of the gaps of history. It was a severed hand of Mr. Door. In some cases, this kind of thing can be used as a symbol. Nicola Flamel, wearing a silk hat and whose eyes had become agile, took the still somewhat bloody severed hand, each drop of blood dripping as if it contained endless starlight, and looked at the huge object in front of him. His gaze became deep and far-reaching, as if he had glimpsed the long river of fate. Tang also looked at the spaceship in front of him, and together with Nicola, borrowed the fool's mask to fool and deceive the layers of seals on this spaceship. On the surface of the gigantic, silver-gray behemoth, layers upon layers of illusory doors were stimulated by trickery and deception, This was a collection of all doors, both a symbol and a part of the seal, left behind on the massive, silver-gray spaceship. At specific times each year, a special method can be used to open a crack in the seal, helping those outside performing rituals to extract some of the power accumulated within the spaceship, allowing that black hole to settle down. There was no need to violently break the seal of Mr. Door, and now was not the specific time. Without wasting any time, the only natural choice was to use trickery and deception to make the seal believe that Mr. Door had arrived, allowing the illusory doors to open on their own, exposing the space within. After the layers upon layers of illusory doors were completely opened, Tang dispersed the severed hand of Mr. Door from the historical void and placed the Fool's Mask into the system space. He, along with the image of the historical void he had pulled, fearlessly walked into it. The layers upon layers of illusory doors suddenly collapsed inward, gradually disappearing, once again sealing the connection between the inside and outside, no longer allowing the things inside to use this as an opportunity to spray energy outwards. Naturally, within this gigantic, silver-gray behemoth, there was more than just the black hole created by the superstar dominator. Tang was not in a hurry to find that mystical black hole. Instead, he examined the alien civilizations of this world from a completely new perspective. Aliens did not necessarily look like humans, and might not even be carbon-based life forms. As an old one, the superstar dominator should also have mastered some highly developed, high-tech civilizations. These high-level civilizations naturally worshipped the superstar dominator. After the superstar dominator issued an oracle, they would naturally manufacture a spaceship for it. During the Fourth Epoch, through certain events, an opportunity for a crack in the barrier arose, and the superstar dominator personally sent the spaceship in. So, in theory, this spaceship couldn't possibly have only one function. Containing a black hole, it should be able to be driven. A glimmer of brilliance flashed in Tang's eyes. The image of Euclidean space inside the spaceship also appeared very heavy, showing a distorted picture. However, Tang could still barely see the general situation clearly through his Sequence 1 status. Well, just like what I saw from the outside, there are no living, highly intelligent creatures here. Tang then thought, when the superstar dominator sent the spaceship in, wouldn't it have thought about stuffing a few aliens in? Well, probably not. So, they either starved to death, or were cleaned up in advance by Mr. Door and Amon. But looking at the situation around this sea area, even if they hadn't been cleaned up by Mr. Door and Amon, they would most likely not escape the involuntary attraction of that black hole under the sealed conditions. It shouldn't be the case that those aliens could just choose not to be affected. Many of the decorations, patterns, and shapes here did not match the aesthetics and dimensions that an Earthling should have. There were many strange carvings on the silver metal walls, like writing, but Tang couldn't understand them. They didn't belong to any existing language system on the North and South continents and should be the language and writing used by the alien civilization itself. Tang thought for a moment and pulled another person out of the historical fog. It was himself from more than 300 years ago, himself during the Sequence 5 secret puppet master period. Naturally, this version of himself did not possess divinity or excessive power, but during Sequence 5, when he first encountered the never-ending theater, Tang used an ability. Knowledge seeks man. Even if he wanted to control this spaceship, he had to figure out the operating principles and usage methods here. As a pure Earthling, he obviously didn't know the usage skills of these alien technologies. Even if he wanted to divine or channel, there should be no mediums left here that could be used for divination or spirits for channeling. Even if he could use Euclidean space to observe, it would take a lot of time. But knowledge is universal. In the knowledge seeks man state, I can quickly understand the knowledge that is activated by the influence of knowledge seeks man. With the appearance of the historical void image on the surrounding metal walls, with the appearance of knowledge seeks man, the characters and symbols carved there simultaneously seemed to be endowed with activity, floating and wandering at the same time. They were injected with power and activated. When the historical void image froze, knowledge seeks man activated all the information and knowledge remaining on this spaceship, turning it into a part that could be interpreted, utilized, and mastered. In the extraordinary world, learning the language of a civilization is a very simple matter. After himself from the Sequence 5 period began to absorb those characters, symbols, and signs one by one, Tang looked towards the end of this passage. For a Sequence 1 angel, the most dangerous things in this spaceship were not poisonous gas, radiation, and various high-tech devices. He no longer toured this alien civilization's creation, preparing to go straight to the biggest hidden danger in this spaceship, preparing to eliminate the other party. That was an unformed black hole, sealed up, capable of distorting space-time, possessing a mystical matrix with infinite mass. A figure wearing a half-top silk hat stepped forward, and a faint gray mist seemed to permeate his dark and deep eyes. All the scenes inside the spaceship seemed to be disrupted and re-grafted together, causing the end of the passage where they were located to present a piece of formless darkness that seemed to be able to swallow even light. The historical void image of Nicholas Valmer, who deceived the historical void image with error, thereby being equivalent to the descent of the main body, carefully examined the thing not far away, at the end of the passage, which was like a bird's nest full of various flesh and blood piled up. Inside the bird's nest-like room, flesh and blood wriggled, clinging to the metal-made walls. The flesh and blood were like blood vessels, the bird's nest was like a womb, and the blood vessels flowed with starlight and various deep and dark things. That seemed like some kind of materialized energy, and they all connected to the very center of the entire room, while connecting the ceiling and the ground, looking like an upright pear-shaped thing. Inside that upright pear-shaped thing, there seemed to be life, slightly pulling the surrounding blood vessel walls. The blood vessels were beating, and the thing seemed to sense the presence of outsiders in the spaceship. As the space inside the entire spaceship was disrupted and re-grafted together, an invisible, terrifying suction force that seemed to be able to suck in everything, including life, consciousness, and fate, came from the end of the corridor not far away. The figure wearing a half-top silk hat lowered the brim of his hat, grafting this suction force to other places, so that the place where they were located would not suffer too much impact because of this. This is a true black hole in the mystical sense. It will continuously devour everything it can touch. When its mass reaches a limit, even space and time will be swallowed and become nourishment for its growth. And at the moment it fully forms, Mr. Door's seal on this spaceship will no longer be effective. Mr. Door and Eamon have a good solution. Regularly extract a portion of the power accumulated by this black hole to interrupt its accumulation of energy and its evolution. This is currently the optimal solution. Putting it in Euclidean space won't work either, Tang. That would affect the stability of the entire space. Nicola observed for a while and said. This was the opinion of a top cryptographer. Tang pondered for a moment and asked Nicola, what about putting it in the system space? The system space, which can even suppress uniqueness, should theoretically be infinitely large and infinitely long, filled with all kinds of mad knowledge. Moreover, behind it lies the knowledge wilderness. That wilderness, filled with mad knowledge, historical fragments, and the ruins of civilization, should be able to accommodate the mass of the black hole. The system, in its main body outside the seal, suddenly felt a chill run down the back of its cybernetic body. This made the system keenly aware of a problem. Seeing that its host was fine, it flashed its cybernetic consciousness back to the school library in Miskatonic University and found a mirror at the end of the second floor. A few bloody symbols had just flashed on that ancient silver mirror. It was about to wallow in self-pity about its situation and then criticize the guy who threw it here, but suddenly, the system slapped it with a cybernetic smack. Magic mirror erodes. I'll let you curse this system behind its back. Let you curse. Let you curse. You lost the crossword puzzle last time, and you couldn't handle it. Magic mirror erodes was bewildered. Magic mirror erodes was furious, and then it squeaked and flung lightning around. Come out if you dare. It couldn't handle it. How could it not handle it? The system chuckled sinisterly. Can't hit me, can you aim straight? The system and erodes started fighting, locked in a fierce battle. Inside the spaceship, Tang, unaware that his system was off fighting, finished speaking. Nicola thought for a moment and shook his head, saying, it's best not to. This mystical black hole is also connected to another world. If we put it in the system's storage, I'm not sure what kind of impact it will have. Perhaps something from another world would directly pass through this black hole, reach inside the world's barrier, and appear in the system space. If it couldn't be resolved, that would probably be a big problem. Another world? Tang's eyes lit up with a flash of inspiration, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Ah, another world. The world of the outer god, the overlord of stars, who created the black hole. The overlord of stars sent this thing in. Surely not just to tear apart the entire world with an unformed mystical black hole, right? If, and this is a big if, in this world, the opposite of a black hole is a white hole, and everything sucked into this mystical black hole appears in a corresponding mystical white hole on the other side, and this is controlled by the outer god, the overlord of stars, then could it also mean that this mystical black hole can connect to another world outside the barrier? No need to cross the barrier. No need to sneak out under the noses of those outer gods. Just pass through this mystical black hole, and you can freely enter and exit one of the points outside the Earth's star system, controlled only by the outer god, the overlord of stars? Although this would very likely be a direct confrontation with the overlord of stars, it must be said that this is a very interesting thing, isn't it? A bit similar to wormhole traversal technology. Ah, the scientific color is getting stronger and stronger. This is definitely cutting-edge high technology. What to do? He really wants to see what real alien technological civilization is like. Nicola carefully considered what Tang said. He stared at the terrifying suction at the end of the passage, which seemed to have slowed down, thought for a while, and then said cautiously, "You can try it, but don't go yourself." He added, "It's best not to even use historical void images. After all, no one knows what will happen if you get sucked into something like this." Loss of the historical void image. Or would it further spread the influence of mysticism to the ancient scholars who pulled the corresponding historical void image? After all, no one knows what impact the loss of a historical void image would have on an ancient scholar. This was caution due to a lack of direct understanding of the outer god, the overlord of stars. Okay. Tang nodded. Then, Conqueror Brooks from the historical mist took out an item. It was a staff 3 meters long, cast like gold, with a dark gold color, and countless tiny patterns on its surface. The tiny grooves that were recessed formed countless mystical symbols and magical marks. The Scepter of the Sun, a magical item that, under the condition of the sun ascending, could directly connect to the chaos sea beneath the earth, causing an outflow of source contamination. Then, before we try, let's praise the sun. If the other side really connects to the world where the overlord of stars is, this could be considered a greeting, right? Nicola's lips moved slightly. He was about to say something, but Brooks had already thrown the Scepter of the Sun, which came from a historical void image and simulated the sun ascending state, towards the mystical black hole at the end of the corridor. Pure purple flames covered the scepter, which flashed past like a javelin. Black, chaotic, filthy, oil-like things constantly surged outwards from the surface of the dark gold scepter. In an instant, it passed through the hidden kingdom barrier built by the mystical servants and struck the mystical black hole. Pure purple flames suddenly erupted, and along with the surrounding flesh and blood, and the starlight and deep, dark things flowing in the blood vessels composed of flesh and blood, they were all ignited. In the silent explosion, the Scepter of the Sun from the historical void image, and the surrounding wildly burning flames that seemed to be able to incinerate everything, were instantly sucked into it by a terrible, terrifying suction. Praise the sun, on the bottomless black thing. Where even light was sucked in, suddenly something indescribable, unseeable, profound, heavy, secretive, terrifying, and vast cast its gaze here. When that indescribable force, merely gazing upon it, seemed to make the surrounding air heavy, the unspeakable oppression causing various degrees of refraction in the space, and staring without a trace of emotion at the images of several historical voids at the end of the passage. Tang smiled and summoned new things from the images of the historical voids again. This time, it was no longer something that needed to be thrown out to say, "Hi," to the overlord of stars, on the other side of the black hole. Ah, of course, he was polite. How could he not bring a gift when visiting someone's home? Tang retracted his hand, which had been pulling at something from his side. When the image of the historical void emerged from the historical mist, one could see that it was a small bottle of blood, filled with countless stars and boiling with countless knowledge. That was the blood left behind when Mr. Door was contaminated by the fallen mother goddess and broke free from the door of escape, only to have his head exploded by the knowledge of the hermit. For those of high standing, blood, hair, bones, spirits, anything containing the spirituality of the owner, could become materials for certain rituals or serve as auxiliary materials for corresponding pathway potions. High-level Beyonders are not just valuable for their Beyonder characteristics. Every part of their body is a treasure to others. Mr. Door, the problems on him are not few. Of course, the most direct thing was the severed hand left by Mr. Door. In the hands of a high-sequence being skilled at exploiting loopholes and fooling others, that severed hand could be used in all sorts of ways. And the bottle of blood in Tang's hand was a product of the combined action of knowledge, Door, and Mother, three different things. Drinking it directly allows the consumer to gain knowledge in a very short period, open the power of doors, in various mystical senses, as well as the ability to become pregnant and give birth, whether male or female, whether sentient or not, whether living or non-living. Theoretically, even a stone could become pregnant and give birth to a Sun Wukong. As that inexplicable, unknown, indescribable gaze fixed on the glass bottle in Tang's hand, the mystical black hole that seemed capable of devouring an entire planet suddenly pulsed like a heart. Thump, thump, in the dense, heavy spaceship, the mystical black hole, wrapped in countless birds' nest-like flesh, showed signs of beating like a human heart. Tang was not surprised, nor did he show any fear. "I'm not afraid of you reacting, I'm afraid of you not reacting." Tang prepared to unscrew the bottle cap while observing the various reactions of the mystical black hole not far away. The being casting its gaze through that mystical black hole remained silent, without any intention of initiating a conversation, but also without shifting its gaze. As the favored one of the Supreme, Tang could clearly feel that on the other side of the black hole, that grand, nebula-sized, boundless, full of divinity, violence, and madness, irrational great existence was not looking away. That was a great existence that could mobilize this spaceship with just its gaze and shake that mystical black hole with its very existence. He was sizing up Tang. Tang was also sizing up him. Overlord of stars, one of the top outer gods in the universe. Tang was now certain who was on the other side of the black hole, but he also had doubts. This stemmed from insufficient information about the state of the outer gods. He shouldn't have had his origin cut off by the revived aggregate. At least in Tang's impression, none of the 9 origins were equal to the authorities of stars, constellations, gravity, or repulsion. Was the Overlord of Stars' descent seeking other origins on Earth? Amidst the flurry of thoughts, Tang opened the glass bottle from the image of the historical void without hesitation. He allowed the blood inside to float out of the glass bottle as gravity suddenly increased, flying toward the other side of the two spaces that seemed very distant but were twisted and grafted together by the power of the mystical servants. As it left Klein Moretti's created mystical realm, the black hole's attraction suddenly increased sharply. As the highest density and highest mass in the current space, the mystical black hole would instinctively gather all the things around it that could be torn down, devouring them, making its mass increasingly larger, thereby breaking through the seal and tearing apart the barrier according to its instinct. And that blood, containing the power of mad knowledge, Door, and the Great Mother, was also accelerating toward the black hole that had already swallowed the historical image of the sun scepter. With specks of starlight, mixed with the purest and seemingly most primitive reproductive power, accompanied by the surging of mad knowledge, the blood, after leaving the mystical realm, gave people the illusion that it was not being attracted to the black hole, but rather actively rushing toward the direction of the black hole. And this was not Tang's illusion, simultaneously originating from the contamination of the fallen mother goddess and mad knowledge. The blood wanted to contaminate the black hole with the aura of the Great Mother, to let the other party experience the madness of knowledge. The mystical mother is also a mother, and the various manifestations of the black hole are also the embodiment of knowledge. Inside the spaceship, the intricate space twisted strangely once again. In the area that had left the influence of the mystical servants, the terrible suction of the mystical black hole had a new target. The heavy, dense senses made the flow of time here seem to become abnormal. Before the historical image from Mr. Door's blood reached the area where the black hole was located, it slowed down and stagnated not far from the black hole due to the time dilation caused by the strange space-time distortion, no longer flying rapidly toward the black hole. This was different from Tang actively manipulating the images from the historical void, forcibly controlling them to stay in place. The greater the mass of an object, the slower the flow of time around it, until it presents a completely static state. In the area where the black hole was located, the flow of time was driven by the super-strong mass and became infinitely slow.
Seeing this scene, Tang didn't waste any words, he continued to pull things out of the historical void.
The umbilical cord left behind when the god of madness, Syrah, was besieged at birth, the fountain of youth, originating from the contamination of the high-level witch, the land of the forsaken gods, the giant's court, the contaminated armor from the area where the dark angel Sasrir was located, the soil from the Fourth Epoch Trier underground, connected to the springhead of the origin of eternal darkness. One after another, the images of historical voids that could cause low and mid-sequence beyonders to lose control on the spot and go mad just by seeing them and feeling them were continuously pulled out of Tang's hands like dancing spirits. They also left the weakened version of the mystical realm, following the laws of gravity and rushing towards the very core of the black hole. Although everything originating from the historical void images, each with its own set of problems, becomes exceptionally heavy and slow after leaving the realm of mysteries, pollution isn't something that can only be instilled through contact. The other side of the occult black hole probably realized that the things he pulled out were all riddled with poison. Although they rejected them, they weren't afraid of them, nor were they afraid that these pollutants would turn the black hole itself into a giant trash can.
This black hole, created by the Overstar ruler, is truly interesting.
Ah, this is bidirectional love, isn't it? Nicholas, watching this scene, seemed to understand what Tang was doing. The occult black hole seems capable of assimilating most objects that approach it, reducing those things to their most essential energy. Pollution, under certain levels, is simply reduced to energy after being swallowed by the occult black hole. Which is to say, all things return to one. By using various historical void images, each with different origins of pollution and varying negative effects, to test how much control the actual manipulator on the other side of the occult black hole has over this occult black hole, whether they can freely open and close it, allowing it to only exhibit the power of devouring, or whether it can freely switch between devouring and connecting to other dimensions.
As long as we don't try to destroy this thing, don't try to disrupt its current state and stability, the black hole jointly sealed by Mr. Door and Amon will be unable to escape its current predicament. Even if that actual manipulator can extend their power through the barrier, they are merely images from the historical void. Ending the state of the historical void image allows them to quickly retreat. If the actual manipulator of that black hole can't withstand these large, toxic wastes that Tang is pulling out, and closes the channel connecting this occult black hole to the astral realm, this occult black hole will only be left with its instinctive devouring reaction. And troubles with brains and troubles without brains require different ways of handling.
That would be interesting. A truly meaningful occult waste bin, capable of stuffing anything inside, as long as it doesn't exceed its own capacity for transformation and assimilation. It can infinitely restore those things, crushing and assimilating pollution as well. I just don't know what the carrying limit of this black hole is. If everything thrown in would directly lose its function due to distorted gravity or something, wouldn't it be possible to just stuff all the troubles on Earth, one after another, into it?
Stuff Amon in, take out the seer Beander characteristic from the Fate Horse, stuff Adam in, take out the writer characteristic and uniqueness, stuff the true creator in, take out the hanged man's Beander characteristic and uniqueness. The occult black hole just needs to eat all of their bodies, minds, and souls, never giving them a chance to revive. And after resolving so many big troubles on Earth, the black hole expands. At worst, let Nicholas redesign the ritual here, performing such a sea prayer ritual every month, no, every day, and then continue queuing up to collect those messy things, stuffing them all in. This way, there's no fear that this occult black hole will eat too much and expand, devouring the entire planet. What a great trash can, and it looks like it can hold so much. Enough.
When Tang took out those polluted time worms from Euclidean space, eagerly preparing to have Brooks throw them into the black hole's sphere of influence as well, a voice suddenly erupted in his ear.
His mind also buzzed for an instant, as if hearing the roar produced by countless stars colliding.
That voice, like a tide, swept outward from that occult black hole. That low hum, like planets and stars, like countless celestial bodies reorganizing, the sound produced in creation and destruction, echoed in the ears of all the historical void images. Tang immediately felt his historical void image begin to shake, as if it would return to the historical fog at any moment due to this degree of shaking. That was the voice of the outer god, the Overstar ruler. This was different from any language of the northern and southern continents, but it could leverage nature. It was the murmur of the stars. And if he wanted people to hear clearly, then they could hear clearly. If he wanted people to understand, then they could understand. On the other side of the occult black hole, the great existence that seemed to have been observing for some time emitted a low sound, like the continuous collision of countless substances at the very beginning of the universe's birth. Tang stopped the action of continuing to pull out historical void images. Nicholas, standing to the side, frowned, took a step back, and his eyes gradually became dull. He detached from the current historical void image. "Should I address you as Overstar ruler?" Upon hearing that voice, Tang reached into the historical fog with one hand, but didn't pull anything out. His forearm was slightly tense at this moment, as if he was pulling a heavier object, ready to pull an even heavier, more terrifying thing from the historical fog into the real world, allowing it to display its power at any sign of trouble. That star-like murmur sounded again. Nicholas's historical void image flickered, as if some kind of incomprehensible bug had occurred. High-dimensional. No, you are not high-dimensional. High-dimensional? High-dimensional overseer? Tang extracted the information he wanted from this murmur of the stars. As expected, there really is some unclear relationship between me and the high-dimensional overseer. He couldn't help but click his tongue. What virtue or ability did he possess to have such a strong connection with an outer god? Ah, that's right, the future him also seems to be a large-sized evil god, the super-sized evil god on Earth's side. However, judging from the fact that Nicholas caused my historical void image to malfunction, leading the Overstar ruler to believe for a moment that I was the high-dimensional overseer, to some extent, I can occupy the position of high-dimensional overseer among those outer gods. Just as the murmur of the stars was subsiding, before the next murmur that seemed capable of shattering people's skulls sounded, Tang said directly, "I wonder, would you like to make a deal with me?" Judging from the feedback from the various pollutions just now, what the occult black hole can instinctively absorb is various complex, insane knowledge. Is the knowledge wilderness one of the Overstar ruler's main targets? Then there's a bargaining chip, Miskatonic University. Carrying his suitcase, Olsen, who had just emerged from the spirit world, saw Nicholas Flamel waiting at the entrance of Miskatonic University, seemingly for quite some time. This sequence 1 Archangel stood by the massive, magnificent cyan black stone gate, still with that composed and unhurried demeanor, looking no different from usual, and not much changed from 300 years ago. However, Olsen keenly noticed that this angel's hair seemed to be curling. Was Mr. Flamel's hair this long before? And it's curling, too. Did he get a new hairstyle? Suppressing the silent grumbling in his heart, the Abraham family-born arcanist curiously asked, "Is there something important that you've called me back for?" Yes, Nicholas didn't seem to notice the inner turmoil of the arcanist before him. He flashed a perfectly standard smile, and then slowly said, "The mystic's Wanderer and Planeswalker rituals are settled." The Wanderer and Planeswalker advancement rituals are settled? Olsen's eyes lit up. As a Sequence 4 Beander, Olsen's actual age was clearly higher than the lifespan limit that his sequence could provide. If it weren't for the high sequence beings of the Thief Pathway helping those mystics who couldn't advance and had to face lifespan limitations, Olsen thought he might have tried to leave this planet and head to the stars alone. Or perhaps he would have already reached the limit of his lifespan, entered a coffin, and become dust. The Sequence 3 advancement ritual already involved the astral realm, involving the true meaning of the mystical starry sky, and according to existing mystical literature, the problems of the starry sky were not small.
Within their family, there was an angel who had once been a planeswalker, who silently and inexplicably lost control and died after returning from the starry sky one time.
And within the Beyander characteristic left behind by this Abraham family angel, there was pollution that was almost impossible to remove. It came from the starry sky. Every Beyander involved in the field of astrology could more or less experience the danger of the starry sky. Although Tang had previously promised to help solve this part of the problem, Olsen also understood that the danger of the starry sky far exceeded their imagination, and there would be no results in a short time. He had waited for a long, long time, and now, that moment had finally arrived. Although Olsen had also tried to complete the ritual himself, all attempts had only ended in failure. He couldn't help but wonder. What method is it, leaving this planet? Or have you found other alternative rituals? Leaving this planet and heading to the depths of the universe, Nicholas didn't elaborate. The two of them were now walking one after the other to the first floor of a certain teaching building. Nicholas casually pushed open one of the doors. Under the effect of the bug, the area corresponding to this door had an error, and the world inside the door was connected to other areas. Inside the door was not a regular lecture hall, but an empty-looking, uninhabited street. The clean street had poles erected on both sides, dyed with dim yellow light. The sky was filled with peaceful, white clouds, and one-story and two-story detached houses were staggered on both sides of the street, extremely rhythmic and exceptionally clean. Olsen followed Nicholas into the street, and the door behind them quietly closed and disappeared the moment they entered. Black Vortex Town. Olsen, dragging his suitcase, saw a sign hanging on the erected pole, with such a word written in Hermes script.
This was the name of the town. This doesn't seem to be a town in reality, he said.
The various layouts and local weather conditions, the humidity in the air, the humanities and architectural structure, all indicated that this was not a city in reality. Olsen, the arcanist who had once been a traveler, had already come to a conclusion in his heart.
Somewhere in the Crimson District. He had been to the third floor of the never-ending theater and knew that that place was very strange, and it was not surprising that he could create such a special scene out of thin air.
Yes, Nicholas succinctly agreed with the arcanist's idea. After opening the door to the Crimson District and entering this area contaminated by Euclidean space and gradually assimilated, he was ready to continue opening the door, taking Olsen to the core area where Tang was located. This was a fictional town created based on a certain town within the kingdom of Feniapotter in the real world, and currently, this town had not yet been officially put into use, and the necessary puppets had not yet been deployed. Although the environment looked different from the north and south continents of the real world, Olsen didn't feel anything dangerous here. As the two stepped forward, the faint airflow they brought with them suddenly blew away into the distance, turning into a visible gust of wind, sweeping across the sky not far away, rolling up the clouds in the sky, and flying to a more distant, unreachable place.
Olsen's pupils dilated slightly. Just now, he didn't feel anything strange. Nicholas glanced at the suddenly appearing hurricane and then withdrew his gaze.
This king of angels felt that his hair was also a little itchy. Nicholas led Olsen to the door of a building not far from where they had just opened the door, grabbed the doorknob, and continued to open the door. When the door slowly opened outward, the scene behind the door changed once again. The interior of this door was also not a normal home furnishing arrangement, but was connected to an empty underground cave. It was empty and vast, like a huge pit dug out artificially, with every twist and turn presenting a perfect ratio, without any protrusions or depressions, and the walls and ground were smooth and without anything else. In the center of the cave, there floated an object about 1 meter in diameter, but completely black, as if even light would be distorted and captured. After crossing that door, Olsen suddenly felt that his gaze couldn't help but be cast towards the black object in midair that couldn't even reflect light. It was like a mystical vortex that could absorb and aggregate all gazes and attention, causing all those who felt it to involuntarily throw all their forms into it. What is that? Olsen swallowed. He felt that just now his mind seemed to have been sucked away by that thing. And the frantic warning of his spirituality barely allowed the arcanist to suppress the abnormal emotional fluctuations in his heart. A black hole. Nicola had already left at some point, and answering Olsen was Tang, who had also appeared beside him at some unknown time. Black hole? Olsen forcibly twisted his neck, but his gaze couldn't help but drift towards the thing at the center of the underground cavern that seemed to occupy his entire mind, asking in disbelief. As an astrologer who had studied the various astrological concepts and knowledge summarized by Miskatonic University, Olsen naturally knew what a black hole meant. Yes, a black hole. Tang, enduring Olsen's, "What nonsense are you talking about?" gaze, nodded very naturally, but not a pure black hole. This thing is a mystical black hole created by a great being from beyond our planet. At some point in the past, it was secretly sent into our planet. Next, well, if there are no accidents, we can use this mystical black hole to directly leave our current planet and go to an unknown, but sufficiently distant, starfield, thereby completing the ritual. Olsen. Tang, well, I can understand every word you're saying. But how come putting them together gives him the feeling that he's still dreaming? Since you understand, then prepare yourself. Tang clapped his hands, signaling Olsen to move and stop rolling his eyes. For a very long time to come, we probably won't be here. If there's anything you want to bring or do, hurry up and pack up, go and complete it. Tang glanced at Olsen's hair, which was already starting to curl, shook his head, and directly drove him away. Olsen had only arrived for less than a minute, nervous. Nicola, who had just left. Tang smiled. All right, you're the boss, we'll listen to you. Seeing Nicola return and take the person away, Tang refocused his gaze on that mystical black hole. Indeed, even if the concept of that mystical black hole is completely broken down and mixed into the local culture, its influence is still very great. This city should become very, very interesting, right? If there's a chance in the future, let the Emperor and Little K come in and have a look. It's just that I don't know if they can get the point here. Tang, who had pulled Olsen in and then sent him out to prepare for the upcoming space odyssey, looked at the mystical black hole floating in midair. He recalled some transactions he had made with the Overlord of Stars not long ago. Hopefully, there will be a good result. As a Sequence 1 seer, Tang would not easily leave Tingnan City, leave Miskatonic University. The ultra-long-distance manipulation of the bionic marionette module, through Tang sending several marionettes to the other side of the black hole, proved that the spirit threads of those marionettes could not pass through the initial barrier and connect to himself. That is to say, if his main body leaves Earth, then reaching beyond the starry sky, without using Euclidean space, it is impossible to use the ability of the seer's marionette in the main body to switch places to directly return to Earth. Create an almost real historical void image that can deceive rules and fate, to replace me in going to the starry sky, and once this historical void image is contaminated or destroyed, under the operation of the bug, I can receive feedback, but it will not cause problems for myself. This is a high-level application of error, deceiving rules, time, and fate. If Nicola Flamel had not already become the Angel King of the error pathway, Tang would have had to let the mystics form their own teams, and then he would send angel-level marionettes to take them out. As for why he didn't radiate Euclidean space outwards, cross the initial barrier, and reconnect the spirit threads of those marionettes to himself. Judging from the information obtained from the Overlord of Stars, Tang thought of the words of the great being who controlled the authority of stars, density, gravity, etc., and couldn't help but feel a slight precipitation in his thoughts. The high-dimensional overseer, he is mad. This is not the madness of warring against the adjacent, intersecting pillars of the old days because of the amalgamation of various extraordinary powers and the inability to resist the effects of aggregation. Nor is it the madness of lacking our so-called humanity and coldly watching, but the true meaning of madness. Killing, chasing, without reason, losing all self-control, trying to kill everything. According to the information revealed by the Overlord of Stars, the high-dimensional overseer, similar to the authority of Euclidean space, suddenly and inexplicably went mad at some point in the past. He killed the members of his own family, destroyed many races and civilizations that believed in him with symbolic power, and then this old one concealed his figure. Even the Overlord of Stars did not know where he went, and the specific situation could no longer be determined. This was something Tang had never anticipated. And through divination of his own future destiny, through the ability of Euclidean space to observe the future, Tang knew that if his main body stepped into the astral world, he might encounter an attack that would endanger his life, from a being of extremely high status. Following the instinctive law of aggregation, when the high-dimensional overseer perceives Euclidean space spreading outwards, and my main body also appears outside the barrier, he will appear, forcibly reclaim the things related to him on my body, complete the aggregation, and return to completeness. My descent, accompanied by the descent of the Transcendence, is not only the power of the system and the knowledge wilderness, but also a part of the high-dimensional overseer's characteristics that have been torn off.
Well, this should not involve the source quality, not the kind of part that can be repaired automatically and combined into a complete old one after being torn off, but it is special enough. This specialty is so special that the high-dimensional overseer becomes even more difficult to control after losing this part of the characteristic, and instinctively chases the remaining parts, becoming crazy.
But after learning about the high-dimensional overseer, going mad from the overlord of stars, combined with his own characteristics and the situation of Euclidean space, Tang still couldn't understand something.
He is on Earth, and Euclidean space is also on Earth. Shouldn't the high-dimensional overseer be guarding around Earth? Why would he kill his own family, destroy other civilizations, and then disappear?
Shouldn't he frantically slam into the initial barrier, trying to extend his power and to grab him? Old days dominator, a great being above sequence. Now, where is the high-dimensional overseer again? For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.